Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a Boeing 737 pilot, and today we are going to fly the mighty, the Antonov 225, also called the Mriya, which is Ukrainian for dream. And this airplane is a dream indeed. Not only because it comes at a very good price of just $19.99, but also because it looks just marvelous and it flies really fun as well. But we're gonna go over that in today's live stream. Here's the plan for today. We are currently sitting at Kiev Hostomel Airport, and we are going to fly this one over to Cologne-Bonn Airport. Hostomel used to be the home base of the Antonov 225, and that's the reason I've chosen this place. Now, I know the entire thing is a little bit political, but let's try to forget that for once for today. And the sole purpose of this live stream is to enjoy flying this airplane. So, that is our plan for the day, and here we are. Let's start with a quick walk around of the plane before we are eventually going to head into the cockpit to make our way for the flight. And we've currently opened the cargo door, the front cargo door of the 225, and this is a huge door. It is the biggest in business. And in fact, the entire airplane pretty much is the biggest in business. Maximum takeoff weight 640 tons, maximum landing weight 550 tons, and maximum payload 255 tons. That is almost twice as much. In fact, that is more than twice as much as, for example, a 777 can carry. Now, of course, that means we are going to use a little bit more fuel than a 777 as well, but we're gonna get to that a little bit later on in the flight. Now, let's count those tires that we have and those wheels. That is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 on this side, 14 on the other side makes 28, plus 4 in the front, that is 32 wheels in order to get this plane going. Now that is what I call an airplane. Alright. So, we've seen how the 225 looks like from the outside, so here's the plan for the day. And look at that, I'm currently logged into VATSIM, and of course there is somebody else over there as well. Even though the model matching is not really working yet on VATSIM with this aircraft, because the files are still encrypted, but I'm sure we'll get a 225 eventually as well. Okay, so originally, this plane was designed to carry the Soviet space shuttle Buran, and in order to do that, it had these fittings attached to the top of the plane that we can see up here. So this is basically where the Buran would have been fitted to, and then it would carry the shuttle on the shoulders, just like, for example, the Americans do with the 747. Well, I should say the Americans did with the 747, but you know where this is going. So, we'll have a more detailed look into the inside later on as we're flying, so for now, let's just head right into the cockpit of the plane, and then we'll start making our way. And of course, once you try to do something, the views are totally acting up. I've seen somebody else encountering this, but I don't know why. I bet it's probably related to the nose and the opening of the nose. Anyway. Sure enough, we had to encounter something today, but with that, I hope that our bugs are over. So, I did do a little bit of flying with the plane earlier on, in order to gather a little bit of experience with it, so that I would not come over as an entire noob when we are flying later on. And what I've done so far is I've done one flight from Leipzig towards Hostomel, and then a very short one flown to Leipzig, just in order to, you know, get a little bit of experience with the plane and see how it works. So that's pretty much all that I've done with this plane so far. So you can see I'm still pretty new to it, and obviously I am, because there was hardly anything previously to learn how to fly this. Now, with that pretty much said, I would say we start preparing the airplane straight away. And the first thing you're going to notice is most of that thing actually is in Cyrillic letters. There is an option for English in the tablet. We're going to talk about that as we fly along. But for now, in order to prepare for what we're about to do, it will suffice to say that we will have the... It will suffice to say that we have most of the flight deck actually in Cyrillic letters. So that was a bit of a challenge. And thank you very much to the chat already. You guys are going to help me out today as well. And Niat has actually already said the shifting of the camera upwards is caused by the plane kneeling forward when opening the nose. And indeed, if we just have a quick look at that... Come on, airplane, you can do it. Here we go. This is one of the very cool features of the plane. When the cargo door opens, the nose wheels can kneel forward like you see it happening right here. Then it's got this... Then it basically stands on here, and that is how the forward cargo ramp is then extending. This entire process is taking several minutes, so that's why I was a little bit caught and surprised by it. And we also have to keep an eye on this as we are about to depart once again, once our cargo is loaded, because basically the same time that we take right now to open the ramp is what we'll need later on to close it once again. But here we've got it. And this ramp is built really strong because you can put 255 tons of weight over this into the airplane. But I'm going to show you in the load manager in a few moments. There are some pretty cool options of what you can load inside this airplane. But for now, here we've got the ramp extending. And while this extends, if we just go up a little bit, the livery that we have over here is pretty much the livery that the plane last had before it was destroyed in the Russia-Ukrainian war. However, Microsoft have actually added this one up here to the nose, which I wouldn't have expected Microsoft to do, but I can certainly understand why they did. Okay then. Let's go back down. And the ramp is almost extended. So, when we go back into the flight deck to start the pre-flight preparations, then we'll actually immediately start retracting the front cargo door, because this is going to take a lot of time, probably even more than we will need to set the entire airplane up to go flying. But that is really amazing to see what this airplane offers up here. Alright, almost out. And here we go. That looks like it's almost it. Now they've just got to extend these. They've just got to extend these now, which is probably going to take a little bit more time. Here we go. Okay, I tend to say we've almost seen it, so let's go to the front once more. Check out the animations. Are there actually any hinges or anything over here? That would be amazing. No, if we look very closely we can see that front part of the ramp is actually flying up here. There are no hinges mounted, but I guess that would have been asking for a little bit too much of the model. Okay, here we go. That is an amazing looking airplane, isn't it? This is an absolutely amazing looking airplane. But okay, now that we've seen it, let's head into the flight deck and let's actually check out what we can load into the cargo hold. So we've got a couple of default cargoes over here that we can show visually, and if we go into load cargo, then it's going to load the associated weight into the plane as well. So we've got some general cargo boxes here, or we can take a truck, we can take 2 fire trucks, a train, 3 helicopters, or a boiler. Now how cool is that? So for our sake today, we are going to take that boiler. Let's go ahead. Cargo loaded. Let's see that. And here we go. That is our boiler loaded into the airplane. Isn't that like absolutely amazing? And by the way, I totally love the fact that they have modeled this in 3D. Totally love it. And the associated weight and weight imbalance has been loaded into the airplane as well. Now, going back up into our cockpit, if we have a look at the payload page right now, we can see that the boiler weighs 140.4 tons, and this has been added into the airplane in the middle main cargo section. So this is a correct distribution of the weight, and despite having something like this loaded into our airplane, we still have room for 100 tons of extra cargo. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that totally incredible? Alright, so let's apply that load. The other thing, unfortunately, the fuel, we'll have to do straight from the simulator's own menus. But let's just do those things real quick so that we've got them over with. So quick look into the flight plan for what we're about to do today. This is our plan from Antonov 2 Airport, which is Hostomel Airport, towards Cologne Bonn, and we are supposed to depart in 16 minutes. Flight level 340 is going to be our cruising level, and the estimated takeoff weight 539 tons. Now, we are probably going to weight a little bit less today because I opted for that boiler as cargo, but if we have a look at that, estimated zero fuel weight 474 tons. And if we go right into the simulator, then we end up with some values that I don't really want to believe. Okay, I've said nothing. Let's load the fuel first, and then we decide on the amount of... and then we look at the weights again. So, looking at the fuel, the weather in Cologne is good. We're supposed to take 66 tons of fuel for this 2 hours 20 flight. So 66 tons, I don't see any reason to take extra, but since I don't know how accurate the fuel burn of this is going to be, let's just add another 5 tons, makes it 71 tons of fuel for this 2-hour flight. Okay, so 71 tons of fuel, that means I gotta enter it in pounds up here. 71, that gives me 35,500 per side. Actually, it doesn't. It gives me more like 71,000 pounds per side. Not checking it too precise with those numbers, because the fuel burn of this thing is tremendous anyway. Okay, so let's see what we've got now. Apply load. That gives me a current weight of 412 tons. Okay, in other words, we could have taken a little bit more cargo here based on our flight plan, but let's not take it too serious with the weights for this particular live stream. Basically, what we want to do is have a look how to fly this Antonov. Okay, so that's our airplane all loaded up. So what we're going to do next is to fire the thing up. And excuse me for that. So we said that we are going to have a ground power unit connected, and we said we wanted to start closing the doors as soon as we start setting up the airplane. So if we go outside, then I've just started the closing process, and you can see how it's basically undoing everything that it did earlier on. So this is going to take a little while, so take that into account when you are preparing your own flights, as closing those doors can take easily 10 minutes time. So if you don't want to waste 10 minutes of your time, then you better plan closing those doors early enough. But okay, for our purposes, we'll just go straight back inside and we'll start setting up the airplane. So, Flight Engineers panel, quite a big thing over here, but don't worry, it looks more complicated than it actually is. So, I'll take you through these panels as we fly along. For now, I'm just going to take you through some of the normal procedures. So we'll start up here, so flicking on the batteries. And we can take the ground power unit as well, which shows connected, and we see the lines up here on the panel as well. Looks a little bit familiar with the Western aircraft that we're used to, doesn't it? Even though we have a ground power connected, I still want my APUs, so we're going to start up the APU now, and this is the APU panel. Basically, to start this up, we make sure that the APU fuel heaters are not turned on. I repeat, not turned on. And this is two APUs, by the way. One on the left side, one on the right side. Then we arm the fire detection mechanism, flick on the APU master, and then we have the APU starter switch up here. And that starts APU number 1. Now, we basically do the same on the other side for APU number 2. The fuel heater is off, turn on the fire detector, turn on the master, and we click on the APU starter button. Now, we have the APU RPM gauge up here. Note that Antonov has basically used the term RPM, so rounds per minute, for pretty much every thing where Western aircraft would say N1. And Neot, that is a very good question indeed. Is it possible to add additional passenger weight to get closer to the predicted weights? Yes, it absolutely is. So we'll let the APU start up here. Note the EGT on the left, the EGT on the right, and the APU N1 basically. So what we can indeed do, and I like your suggestion, Neot, is we can go to the payload page and we can add a couple passengers in the front and in the back over here. So I'm just about going to fill those up completely. Now we're at 415.6 tons. Now, if you think about it, we're at 415.6 tons. And we're more than 200 tons below our max takeoff weight. Also, one more thing to consider over here. Our fuel weight, currently 64.4. We gotta load a little bit more. So let's just quickly go into the weight once more. What on earth is it doing now? I'll probably never understand that simulator. Okay, here we go. 72 tons of fuel. That shall be sufficient for our flight. Okay. Payload applied. Fuel applied. Perfect. 423 tons. Right, so the APU is up and running, as we can see. RPM is showing the maximum, and I don't quite know why we're getting the ready to start and air intake not closed messages right now, but I'll just leave it at that. We turn the APU bleed air on, and with the APU bleed air on, we can basically go back over here, make sure the APU generators are on, which they are showing over here, and next up we can turn on the transformers and the rectifiers and the transformer rectifiers over here. Basically, these things convert AC power into DC power, or sorry, the other way around, DC into AC, and the other way around. Okay, so that is the electrical power applied, and now for a reason that I have no idea about, Antonov actually went ahead and made switches for every single piece of equipment that needs to be turned on separately. So if we start up here, we are now basically turning all of our equipment on. You can see how I'm turning the switches. There are more and more things coming to light in our panel. And now that we've got the switching on the navigator's panel on, we can move forward to the cockpit, and we can continue on the captain's overhead panel and on the first officer's overhead panel as well. This is basically turning on all the flight instruments and the air data computers over here. This is our light panel, and we want to put the navigation lights on. The rest of the stuff is going to remain off for now. Okay, they are lifting the plane up again. Can we see that from the outside? Here we can see it, how they are slowly lifting the plane back up to a normal position, and once that is done, the doors will start closing, and then we will be more or less ready for engine start. Okay. Then, there is a very good comment there by MK. Hi, what about navigation? Why did they install a simple GNS in it? This is not a small single-engine piston aircraft. Yeah, that is a very good question, MK. And the answer to that is, because that is what the real plane used for navigation. They primarily used a GNS 530. If you look at pictures from the real plane, there is one from just 2 months prior to its destruction. You will find that the GNS 530 is actually exactly what was installed in the real plane at that time as well. Of course, if we go back to the navigator station, we are going to find some more equipment like an INS. But the primary piece of navigational equipment actually is the GNS 530. Alright, we'll continue with our flight deck setup, and the next thing that we're going to notice is that on the standby altimeter we have feet and hectopascals, but on the primary we have meters and the typical Soviet way of measuring things, which is like totally different from the Western way, which is why we have different units on the different altimeters over here. Now, for Hostomel Airport there is no weather information published anymore at the moment, so we'll just have to live with pressing the B button, and that is basically going to give us whatever is deemed correct by the simulator, which we have no way of verifying if it actually is. Going on from here, we have our mode control panel where we can basically dial in the altitude in meters and the speed in kilometers per hour. Vertical speed is in meters per second, and basically 1 meter per second equals 200 feet a minute. We also have one variometer down here in meters per second and the other one in feet a minute, so that we have both available. So if we go ahead preparing our plane, the overhead panel is basically dedicated to the lights in the front section and then to the communication in the aft section. So basically what we are going to do is we'll just take our transponder, standard 2000, and the radios will actually set up in a few moments when our engines are starting up, because the startup needs a little bit of time here, so we are going to make good use of that. Going back to the aft of the plane, we need to have a look into the engineer station, and basically what we have up here is the hydraulic pump switches of the engines, and we're going to turn all of those off. So basically lift the guards, click on them, and then you will see the switches coming out a bit. Let me try to get up close so that you guys can see it on the live stream, like this. And now I'm just personally leaving the guards open, because that makes my life a little bit easier. Next up is the setup of the fuel pump. Now this looks complicated, but it really isn't. All you need to do is basically press 3 buttons up here, provided that you've loaded the plane up from the previous cold and dark setup. So all we need to do is press this, this, and this. And the easy way to remember is, I just remembered, on the leftmost panel, on this one, I have the third row not illuminated, and on the middle and the rightmost I have the first row of switches not illuminated. And the rest of it, basically, those stay all on. The lower line of buttons up here is on. Something that I always find amazing to see if we have a look at the fuel gauges up here is how empty those actually are. Like, this really looks as if we were departing with final reserve fuel, but indeed it is so much more fuel. Sufficient for almost 4 hours of flying, as we've loaded it up into the airplane right now. Okay. Then, let's go ahead and with that we have pretty much all of our preparation for the flight completed. So, unfortunately we don't have any normal checklist available for this plane anywhere. All we have in the manual is the standard flows for the normal operation of the plane. But we can live with that. So let's go ahead and actually start our engine startup, provided that this nose will eventually close. But looks like this is still taking a little bit of time, so we might as well start using that time in order to set up our GNS 530 for our flight towards Cologne. So this is the standard working title GNSS 530. So there is actually not all that much that I can tell you about it that you wouldn't know about already, but for the sake of it, let's go over the setup. So first of all, we'll let it acquire its satellites, and once it's done with that, we can then start typing in the waypoint and the route. Now, we'll actually have to type quite a bit of stuff over here, so what I'm going to do is, depending on how long the engine start is going to take, because the engine start takes ages in this plane, but depending on how long that takes, if I would be about ready for departure except for the route, I would only program the standard instrument departure and the first couple of waypoints. And the rest of it I would do en route. Now, I don't know if that's how they do it on the real Antonov 225, but I do know that back in the day when I've been in flight school, we used a GNS 430, which is basically the same unit with a smaller screen, and that is how we did it in order to save time from setting the airplane up. So we go ahead, flight plan button, push cursor, rotate it to the side, and now you'll notice the little icon over here, and that is a keyboard icon. If you press that, you can simply type from your keyboard, and this is going to save you so incredibly much time doing this. Okay, so we're going from Hostomel towards Cologne. No, not Munich, Cologne. Enter that, procedure, departure. And our departure is today going to be, provided that I can connect my iPad to the internet. Okay, here we go. We're going to do the Castle 1 Whiskey departure. We're going to select this, runway 33, load. And now we basically go down to the next waypoint where we want to enter something. And what I'm going to do right now is just to enter the first couple of waypoints over here. And then we can do the rest of them later on. So our next waypoint is going to be Latva. And the next waypoint thereafter, just rotate that thing again, is going to be Ranum and thereafter Pavet. Oh, Ranum and Pavet. Okay, that's pretty much all that I'm going to enter for now, because the rest of it we'll do when we have a little bit more time. The nose is closing, so let's have a look into Navigraph to see what departure we're actually about to fly. So, I'm using Sim Toolkit Pro once again in order to show everything over here. So let's go ahead now. And this is still an old flight, let's import the latest. Okay, so let's do a departure briefing. Main threat for the departure is that we are not so familiar with the airplane or with the route over here. So we're parking up here, and unfortunately we will not have a pushback available because GSX doesn't like the Antonov on my computer at the moment. It simply crashes the Coopel engine. But that means we'll have to do a taxi out straight from the parking position where we are at the moment. It's going to be a pretty short taxi. We're parking on position number 5, and then we're going to go via taxiway number 1 to the holding point runway 33, and that is where we're going to depart. Our departure then is going to be the Castle 1 Whiskey departure, which is basically straight ahead to 4,930 feet, then make a left-hand turn to intercept the bearing 261 outbound Bravo Oscar NDB and cross Castle at or above 10,010 feet. If you're wondering why they have so strange looking altitudes over here in Ukraine, that is because they used to have metric altitudes back in the day in the Soviet Union, and when they switched to feet, they basically didn't change the altitude restrictions, they simply converted the units 1-to-1. So that is why you have restrictions like 10,010 here in Ukraine. However, when you actually fly there, I did fly to Ukraine until like 2 weeks prior to the breakout of the war, and when you do fly to Ukraine, they still give you everything in feet and in knots, so you don't have to be afraid of meters or kilometers an hour or something when you're coming in as a foreign airline. However, when you come in as an Antonov, I'm pretty sure they are still going to give you the altitude in meters. Anyway, so that's the route that we plan to fly today. For the takeoff speeds, unfortunately, there is not a lot of data currently available. So what we are going to do is AnyBuilds built a little trick in, and that little blue bug that we see up here, that is basically our rotation speed for the takeoff weight that we currently have. So what we are going to do on the takeoff is we rotate at the blue bug, and then we accelerate to the yellow bug, and that is how we are going to depart. Now, for the speed selection, I'm simply going to put this to something up high. We still have a 250 knot limit below flight level 100, and conveniently, converting 250 knots into kilometers per hour is quite easy, because that gets you roughly 450 kilometers an hour. And initial altitude, I believe it used to be something very high in Kiev, something around level 270 or so, but it's been a while since I've flown there, so let's just take something high like 5,000 meters initial climb up here, and that should work quite well. Okay, so that's pretty much the setup of the, that's pretty much the setup here completed. So let's go ahead now and start up our engines. If we look outside, the door is finally closed. It only took ages, so definitely take that into account when you're about to fly your AN225. All we gotta do is now close the standard entry door, and as soon as that is closed, which is the case now, let's quickly verify that we have APU power indeed, and both generators are on, very good. So, well, you know what, I'm going to keep the ground power connected, because we are going to start up the engines on stand. Okay, so that's our setup basically completed. We are doing an online flight on VATSIM here, but there is currently no ATC online in Kiev, so let's go ahead and start up our engines. We are going to turn the beacon light on, which is this one, and then from there we head all the way to the back, and starting the engines is quite easy. We have the start panel down here. We turn on the FADEC. Yes, this airplane actually has FADEC. Okay, that's 6 FADEC switches on. Then over here is our engine indications, and over here is a summary of what is commanded. If we go up to the front panel of the captain, then let's quickly look at those engine indications as well. On the left side we have what the thrust levers command. On the right side we have what the engines are actually delivering. And we have them both as a tape and as a digital readout down here. But on the main panel we only have the N1 indications. For anything else we need to go back to the flight engineers panel, and over here we are going to find stuff like our EGT as well. So, that's enough talking. Let's go ahead and start the engines, because this is going to take a couple minutes. We make sure that the FADEC is turned on. We do a quick hydraulic test, putting on the center pumps, and basically making sure that the green lines illuminate, which indicate positive function. When the green lights have illuminated, we can turn them back off again, and with that we are going to start our engines. So, unguard the fuel switches for those that we want to start. Make sure that the fuel switches on the front panel are in the forward position as well as they are over here. And now we are basically going to use the airplane's auto start mechanism. Make sure everything is up and guarded. Turn on the ready switch down here. And now we hold the engine starter for 2 seconds until we see the green lights showing up here. And now the engines are basically automatically starting up. And it's going to start up all 6 of them. The start sequence is going to be 1, 6, 2, 5, 3, 4. And basically all that we need to do now is we monitor the engines starting up, and we are prepared to cut the fuel should something go wrong. Once an engine has successfully started up, we can then switch on the hydraulic pump of the associated engine. So number 1 is on a good way, number 6 has also started spooling up right now. And we have light up on the number 1. And this is going to take a little while now. This is going to take a little while. Normally, if I didn't have to wait for the cargo door to close, this would be the moment where I would just let my imaginary flight engineer do the engine start for me, and I would in the meantime go ahead and program the flight plan into the GPS. Okay, that's engine number 2 starting to light up. And engine number 5 starting to light up. Metal Eye, thank you so much for the €23.99 donation. Credit for preparing so well for the stream. Thank you and enjoy the Mirya. Safe flights and another sheet of paper, but this time below the cargo door. Metal Eye, that is really appreciated. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you so much. And Fizz in the comments is saying this blue color in the cockpit is everywhere in aviation. Indeed it is, and that has a good reason. The reason we see this blue color so often in aviation is because it has a certain effect on the pilot. For example, if you have a look at rescue ships, you will notice that they usually have a green deck, and the reason for that is that the green has a reassuring effect on the patient. And just like that, the blue in the cockpits also has a positive effect on the pilots. And for the same reason, by the way, Boeing, for quite a while, painted their cockpits of the 757, 747, 67 and 777 in brown color. Because they also wanted to achieve this effect with it. Okay, good starter number 1 and number 6. Let's go ahead and turn on the associated hydraulic pumps. Okay, that's the pump switch is on, and we see the on light illuminating, and the pressure is rising up here. So that's the engines 1 and 6. Now we go ahead and we have the numbers 2 and 5 slowly lighting up over here. And once that is complete, the plane is going to start the numbers 3 and 4. And with that, the engine startup is going to be complete. But this is going to take another minute or 2. So if you quickly want to go and grab a drink, then you aren't going to miss much in the next 2 minutes or so. Okay, we have the numbers 2 and 5 running. Let's go ahead and associated hydraulic pumps go on. And the on light illuminates, the lines illuminate, and the pressure is rising as well. And with that, all we need for now is the fuel switches of the numbers 3 and 4, and the plane is just about starting them right now. And Fizz, yes, absolutely, full flap takeoff in this beast. That's what it says in the manual, and initially I couldn't believe it that you have to do a flap full takeoff all the time. So I went to Inibuild's Discord to verify it, and it actually was confirmed by one of the beta testers that indeed they do flap full takeoffs in this plane at all times. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. And Bootwin, do you know what effect the blue color has on the pilots? If I'm totally honest with you, I can't answer that 100%, but I do expect it is something that keeps the people calm, while also making the transition of the eyes easy between the outside and the inside of the plane. And Jolly Lawyer, of course, what's the basic empty weight of this beast? It's 285 tons, if I'm not lying. And let me just quickly look this up for you. Yes, 285 tons is the empty weight of this plane. Okay, so we have 6 good engine starts. Hydraulic pumps go on. We verify the on-light and the lines illuminating, and the pressure is rising. Perfect. So let's head over to the other side of the engineer station, and up here we're going to switch on the engine generators, switch off the APU generators. We can disconnect the ground power unit as well, and with that we can now shut down the APU. So press the red buttons. That is basically what shuts the APU down. Gonna take a short moment, and then it should start turning off. Here we go. Now it starts turning off. While we're waiting for the APU to shut down, let's go ahead and go to the captain's station. And up here, for the taxi, we select flaps 2, arm the spoilers, which is basically moving the lever forward. And now we're going to arm the thrust reversers, and look at this. This is the thrust reverser in the Antonov 225. Isn't that an absolutely amazing piece of Soviet engineering? I absolutely love it. I just absolutely love it. Okay, let's go ahead with the flight control check. We basically have our flight control indication up here and the flap indicator up there. So let's go full up, full down, neutral, rudder, aileron, full left, full right, neutral, and now the rudders. And you will note that we have 2 indicators up here because we actually have 2 rudders on this airplane. When I did the flight control check the very first time in this one, it actually came across as quite confusing to me, because I just thought that doesn't look right. But indeed, if you think about that, we have 2 rudders in this plane. It totally makes sense to have 2 separate indications for it as well. Okay, so that's the basic startup procedure complete. All we've got to do now is to shut that APU down, verify that the RPMs are at 0, which they are, and now we can turn off the bleeds, turn off the fire detectors, and turn off the APU master. We can do that on both sides, and with that the APU is basically shut. Okay, so the last thing that we can do over here is to go to the navigator station and quickly set up for our departure as well. And basically, since we are primarily navigating on a GNS 530, we want as much backup instrumentation as we can possibly get. So let's get those charts out once more. And we see the procedure is based on the Bravo Oscar NDB, which is 1290. So let's dial that in up here on the ADFs. 1290 and 1290. And also we have a VOR in the area, which is the Borispil VOR at Kiev's main passenger airport on the frequency 115.9. So we're going to put that into our radios. So 15.9, and then we have 15.9. Okay, these are the course indications. I'm going to leave them on 0. Well, actually, we can set 261 just as a reference. It's not like we need it, but let's go for it anyway. 261 on the left side, and then we can put the runway track on the other one, which is going to be 328. Okay, so 261 and 328. Here we go. Okay, this little machine up here basically looks up the ident of the VOR and tells us the name of the station as well below it. So we can see the plane has identified the VOR on 115.9 as Bravo Romeo Papa, and the database tells it that the name of the VOR is Borispil in Kiev. So that's how this little plane and station up there work. Last thing we're going to do is to select the correct navigation sources, basically we want to go for the Hotel Alpha Bravo, and up here we want to select VOR1 and VOR1. And on the captain side, down here, we're going to do the selection as well. Hotel Alpha Bravo, which basically tunes it to the ILS. As you can see, this is VOR1, and this HAB over here, which I'm sure is a Cyrillic letter for something totally different, but it looks like that to me. So that is basically our plane set up to the ILS. To the GPS. Okay, with that we are pretty much all set and done. So, quick look from the outside. We are clear on both sides, and as I said earlier on, GSX does unfortunately not really want to push the plane yet, so we'll have to do the things ourselves. So at this moment there is still no ATC online, there is no conflicting traffic. Well, there is a Ukraine International over there, nice. Okay, and that's the runway we want to taxi to, so let's make a left turn out and get this plane rolling. We're at 400 and how many tons right now? Ground power and shocks can be removed. Okay, 422 tons gross weight. Taxi light on. Actually the other way around. Taxi light on. Park and brake off. And we'll not need a lot of thrust. Like, let me just put a little in and we're rolling already. Let's start the left turn straight away so that we don't get into the grass. And this is a huge airplane. Don't be fooled by the way how everything looks so slow up here from the cockpit. This is a huge airplane, and if we look from the outside, you can see that we're actually rolling at a decent speed over here. Okay, clear on the left there, clear in front and on the right. And we are rolling. Now, this looks very, very slow, but if you go to the outside, you see we're actually doing a decent taxi speed up here. Also, note how long this plane is and how far we have to oversteer in order to get it onto the taxi line. If you go outside, we can see that I'm actually steering it pretty much onto the center line right now. Okay, and here we are. At most weights where you are going to operate this airplane, assuming that you don't take it on long haul, you will not need a lot of thrust, so put it back to idle early enough. And note how quickly the plane is actually getting fast up here. Oh. Here we go. Taxiways look very small, so be sure to follow the correct taxi technique by overshooting with the nose, and then getting the airplane itself, or keeping the main gears on the taxiways up here. Like we are doing right now. Okay, perfect. So, getting all the way up to the holding point, let's stop the airplane here for a moment, make sure that there is no conflicting traffic in the area. Okay, park and brake set. Unicom is the active frequency. And then we can go on in a moment. Okay, so very quick check that we've actually got everything set up correctly. Customer traffic, Antonov Bureau 4507 Super, lineup and takeoff, runway 33. We'll need 2 minutes on the runway. Okay, off we go. There's nobody complaining, strobe light on. And of course, park and brake off. Let's go ahead and start the lineup. Basically, this airplane needs a run-up. It needs 2 minutes at 70% N1 on the runway in order to warm up the engines. That is something that I have not really seen on any other jet aircraft, but be sure that if you have air traffic control, if you're flying this thing online, you want to be very sure that you notify the air traffic controller of this requirement for extra time on the runway, because otherwise you are going to cause havoc among the controllers. Okay, on the runway, set park and brake, 70%. Here we go, that's 70% commanded, as we can see on the command instrument up here. The engines are running up, we have a look at the clock, and we are basically looking for 2 minutes right now. At the same time, while this run-up is taking place, we can already go ahead and switch on the window heat and the remaining panels that we have up here. So now we're waiting for the timer. That's 30 seconds of the run-up completed. Let's have a very quick check on the engine instruments back here. This of course would all be done by the flight engineer right now and not by the captain. But this is looking quite good. Then back to the front, we have 45 seconds. So, very quick review of the takeoff procedure. At the blue buck we're going to rotate. The amber or the yellow buck is the buck at which we are initially going to climb until 1,000 feet. Okay, 1 minute over, flaps full selected. And later on then, we're going to clean the airplane up as we pass through certain speeds. And according to the manual, flaps full to 25 happens at 330 kilometers an hour, flaps 25 to 15 at 380, flaps 15 to 2 at 405, and flaps 2 to 0 at 440 kilometers an hour. Once the flaps are at 0, we're going to reduce the power to 112%. And that is basically the entire takeoff procedure. Our standard departure over here is quite easy, straight ahead to about 5,000 feet, then a left turn, and we've programmed the GPS to guide us on that. And that is pretty much our takeoff preparation completed. Another 10 seconds, then we can release the brakes and go. Ostermole Airport, Antonov Bureau 4705 Super, taking off runway 33. Here we go, that's our timing. Park and brake off, command maximum thrust. Take off. Takeoff thrust set, indications normal. $200. V1 rotate. And we're flying. Positive rate, gear up.
Antonov traffic, Ukraine International 292, landing up runway 33.
Sorry guys for the chart. Thank you for the message. My apologies. Okay, so we're climbing to 1,000 feet, which we basically have. Now we can start accelerating. And flaps 25. Flaps 15. Flaps 2. And note how close we are getting to the maximum speed here. And flaps up. And now we're basically at 250 knots already, so we gotta aim to maintain 450 kilometers an hour over here. Flaps are up, so we reduce the thrust to 112 commanded. Okay, the GPS should command the left turn any moment. Here we go. Starting the left turn. According to the information in the Inibuild's Discord, you are supposed to hand fly this airplane below approximately make that 10,000 feet, because the autopilot is not very accurate in here. And that is actually, well, correct according to the real plane, they say. Which I can somewhat believe them. So, we're just about hand flying the plane for now. We can see that we're getting a pretty good rate of climb out of it, which is not that surprising, to be honest, being 200 tons below the maximum takeoff weight. Okay, so, now is the moment where I'd actually need my charts to remember what heading we're supposed to intercept the radial outbound on again. But well, I guess you guys have seen the chart for longer than you actually wanted to. My apologies once again for that. Yeah, my apologies for that. Next time's gonna be better, I promise. Okay, set altimeter standard. The easy part is on the standby, because that is in hectopascals as we're used to. Now comes the more difficult part, but we have unit converter over here. And now I want to know 1013 hectopascals. It can give me 1013. And that equals 760 millimeters, which is the Russian units down here. So we select this one to 760. And off we go. Intercepting the radial. And we're basically past 10,000, so we can start acceleration. Now, the plane actually is not supposed to accelerate very much after 10,000 feet. I couldn't find any data on the exact climb speed that is recommended in the manuals, so I'm relying on the SimBrief data over here. And basically SimBrief tells us to climb at 260 knots. Now 260 knots is roughly 470 kilometers an hour, so that's the reason why I've just selected that. And that is the speed that I'm about to maintain for now. Okay, so up we go. And with that, we can pretty much prepare for using the autopilot. So first thing, make sure you have an altitude selected that is decent for where you want to go. Let's select 9,000 meters right here. And now, engaging the autopilot is quite easy. We press the ER button up here, and with that the autopilot is on. For now, it's just going to maintain the wings level and the pitch. Next up, if we want to follow the GPS navigation, we select the round knob up here to navig, and then we press the PC button. And that is basically going to activate what we have pre-selected up here. So with this, we've now set it to follow the route from the GPS. The primary way of changing the speed or the vertical speed in this plane is by changing the pitch. So right now we have the plane in maintaining a certain set up to maintain a certain pitch, and if I'm telling it to lower the pitch with this little wheel up there, we can see how the nose is coming down and the plane is going to start accelerating. Once we are close to the target speed, we are going to pitch up a little bit again, and then when we reach the target speed, we are going to press the VEL button up here, which is similar to level change as you are used to from your typical Boeing or Airbus. However, it is not recommended to change your speed while in level change mode, as the thing can be quite, let's call it, uncomfortable. So, Let's just bring it up to the target speed once again. It's accelerating nicely. We're looking for 470 kilometers an hour as marked on here. And once we reach that, we're going to press the white VEL button that we have on the MCP up there. And that is pretty much. Let's accelerate a tiny bit more. So that's pretty much now. I press the VEL, and now the plane is going to pitch to maintain the speed. Also note how the speed that we've set up here has now changed to the speed that we had at the moment I pressed the button. And like this, it is basically going to... like this, it's now basically doing a normal climb as per level change in a standard Boeing aircraft. Okay, and it is automatically going to level off at the selected altitude, by the way. So, what else is there to do for us? Well, the landing gear lever should be in the neutral position and the guard closed, and apart from that, the plane is pretty much flying now. According to the user manual, there is not really much more to do for us in the climb. So we are just going to keep the power where it is, and we are going to monitor the autopilot climbing our airplane. According to SimBrief, we're supposed to climb to a flight level of 340. Now that was a little higher weight, so let's go all the way up to flight level 360, let's say. And if we need to dial that in meters. So what we can do is to use the electronic flight bag and say we want a distance of 36,000 feet. Now it tells us that equals 10,972 meters. Okay, so like that, if we select 10,972, we are going to be at flight level 360. Now, welcome to the lovely world of flying in meters. Let's select 11,000. Now, I know that VATSIM controllers are going to start complaining about this, so what we can do up here, we can go to the options and select the altitude window from steps in hundreds into steps in ones. And now, if we see that we're supposed to be in 10,972, we can select this precisely, 10,970, and now that is going to fly us immediately to flight level 370, as it would be in feet. Okay, so that's this set up. So let's go ahead and continue our climb. In the meantime, the plane is automatically guiding us along the GPS route, but remember that I said earlier on that we've only put a couple of waypoints in so far, so we've got to find a moment to type the remainder of the waypoints in as well. And why not just about do that now, before we reach the end of the route down here? So give me a cursor, scroll me all the way down, and then we can start digging through the flight plan once again, in order to actually find the remainder of the routes that we need to enter. So after pivot, we go towards Jitno. Okay, that's Jitno. Then we just turn the cursor again, and the next waypoint is gonna be Debet. That sounds familiar. I've flown over that one in real life. And after Debet, we go towards Luxor. Now, for those of you who've only just joined, basically, we can cut the typing of the waypoints short by pressing the little button that we have up here. And with that, we can input stuff from our computer keyboard, which makes our life a lot easier. So, direct to Patka. And the next waypoint after Patka is going to be Etuda. After that, we continue towards Rapet. Next up, Urona. Then we have Rontu. Thereafter, Alaska. It is a little bit of work to type the route manually. That's why I said earlier on, don't waste the entire time to do this on the ground, just do it in the air. And Always have your flight plan ready in case you get a direct from air traffic control, then you can quickly enter that and then fly direct to that waypoint already. But it is quite important that you actually have your flight plan valid in order to do that. So, Pilam, Velis, Demap. And then we need Geftar. And finally we have Lamop, Ibana. Is that how you type it? No, it's not. Should be Papa at the end. That's better. Germany. So always have a close look that the waypoint you see is actually in the country where you want it to be. Just to make sure that you are not accidentally typing something in at the entire end of the world. But I'm going to show you a couple of procedures on how to mitigate against accidentally putting in an incorrect route in a few moments. Let me just quickly finish up inserting the route over here, which is basically now. Finally, we can select an approach, and looking into the weather for Cologne, it actually has a wind 070 so it's probably going to be an ILS Romeo 14 left, and we're going to take a transition from Whiskey Yankee Papa. Can load that. Yes, and finally we need to start as well. So let's take the ANAP 1 Victor arrival. I don't expect to actually be flying any of those, but it is always good to have something programmed in the GPS. Got a message over here approaching VNAV profile. We ignore that for now. Now, the one thing that we want to make sure is that our waypoints that we inserted are actually correct. So you could either check the tracks and distances of every single waypoint, which would be quite a bit of work, or you just scroll all the way to the end, have a look at the cumulative lag distance that you see on the right side there, and this now tells us 960 miles to go, so that is basically approximately what matches the flight plan, and with that our flight plan is correctly programmed. Okay, so that's the entire route programmed. So let's continue our climb, and basically what we have to watch out for next is the transition from flying an indicated airspeed to flying a Mach number. And once again, I could not find any official data on the Inibuild Discord, so I had to rely on the SimBrief profile, which basically said 250 knots below flight level 100, 260 knots above that, and then Mach 0.74 on the conversion. So basically, we are waiting until the Mach indicator up here shows us 7.4, and by the time we reach that, we are going to hit the max button up here, that amber one, and that is basically flight level change, but holding a Mach number and not an indicated airspeed. So you can imagine the autopilot modes, like you have the white one down here, which is level change with an indicated airspeed, and then you have the amber one up here, which is level change but holding a Mach number. And like that, as said, we'll just fly straight ahead until we see 7.4 on the Mach number indicated up there, and that's going to be our sign to switch the mode over to the other mode to maintain the Mach number. Now, from here, things are going to settle down a little bit. Basically, we are just going to monitor the airplane flying, and you are going to notice that the rate of climb is really reducing here. We're currently at 32,000 feet, and we only do 800 feet a minute now, and this is going to get less quite rapidly. So we've just got to sit it out, and we are eventually going to get all the way up to cruise level. But be aware that if you really give it a high load of cargo, such as, let's say, the full 255 tons that you can take. And you basically, if you load the plane up to the maximum takeoff weight, you are going to be cruising at a very low flight level. As you can see, 300 feet a minute right now, which is not really good. But we are gonna get there eventually. Very slowly, but eventually we'll make it up to cruise level. Unfortunately, there are no tables published for the... Unfortunately, there are no tables published that would actually tell us the optimum altitude based on our weights, which is really what I would be looking for as a pilot right now, because I don't really want to rely on SimBrief being correct there. I would actually like to have some tables available so that I can do my own mathematics and see how high I should or should not be flying. But I guess that is something that we can only carry forward to any builds and see what they are going to say on it, and then we'll just about have to see. And Red Wolf 50 in the comments is saying the GPS has a VNAV page that does the math for you. That is only for descent though, but looking up at the comments, it actually looks like you are... It actually looks like you guys are indeed talking about the descent already, so I'm sorry for that. And FlyCoco737, no, that calculation is actually not done in the EFB, it is actually done in the... not as far as I know. Like, let's quickly go over it. Yeah, load that up from the GPS, please. Here we go. And, no, I don't see any optimum altitudes being shown in here. Would be very nice, though, if they could add that, since Antonov actually supported the development, so I'm sure that they could get... access to that data, but for now, doesn't look like we have it, so we're gonna live with whatever we have available. Alright, so Kiev, or the entire Ukraine in real life, is very, very good at giving shortcuts. So, let's say we get a direct to the FAR border towards Poland, and that would be DBET. And that is actually exactly what I have always gotten when I flew to Kiev in real life so far. So to do that direct, we go on the flight plan page, select the cursor, go down until DBET, press the direct key, enter, activate, enter, and now we go direct towards DBET. Here we can see the plane starts the turn, the GPS has updated, and now we've got 322 kilometers to go on a course of 256. Also note that we've reached our target Mach number of 0.74, so let's now change over into max over here, which is basically now level change mode, but maintaining the Mach number instead of maintaining the indicated airspeed. And we can see how that immediately gives us a positive effect on our rate of climb, and that we see a 200 or 300 feet a minute increased rate of climb, since our indicated airspeed now starts reducing while maintaining the constant Mach number. And we have one to go. And the altitude is selected up here, very good. One thing for you to remember that is actually fairly easy. If you compare the two variometers over here, the digital one is in feet a minute, the analog one is in meters per second. And if you compare the two, you see that 800 feet a minute is roughly 4 meters per second. So that is quite an easy conversion that you can do later on in the descent when you have to use the vertical speed wheel over here. But your GPS is going to give you guidance in feet a minute, since it is a Western-made unit. So your wheel, however, is in meters per second. But we'll talk about that later on as we are about to start our descent. For now, let's just about make it up to cruise level, 200 more feet to go. The airplane is going to level off automatically, and we can actually see the mode has transitioned already. We get the blue high mode illuminated up here, which is basically telling us now that we are about to level off. So 10,970 meters is what we've selected. 10,970 is what it reaches just about now, so it should stop the climb any moment. And indeed it's leveling off. 30,070 feet. I'm totally happy with that. And with that, we are up in cruise. Now, keep in mind, the auto throttle is not available during climb, unless you use vertical speed, but it is not available if you want to fly at a constant Mach number. So, what we'll have to do is, we're going to fly the plane all the way to the target speed, which, in our case, our flight is planned at Mach 0.77. So we'll just let it accelerate until 0.77, and then we're going to turn on the auto throttle with the AT button on the side over here. And basically the AT button simply adjusts the thrust to maintain the speed that's selected up here. So basically we are on speed right now, and now the thrust is going to be adjusted to maintain the speed that is shown up here. In our case, 469 kilometers an hour. Alright, let's get rid of that reverse lever. And with that, come on plane. We want to add a bit more thrust, but it's increasing it right now, so that's about good enough for me. I guess that what we just saw, that we lost a little bit of speed over here, just falls under the Microsoft Flight Simulator Autopilot, which is, well, not quite perfect, to say like that. Okay guys, so, looking in the chat, couple guys a little bit unhappy. Did I give the stream an incorrect name? Indeed I did. I apologize. Let me correct that right now. To Cologne. Safe. And if you're wondering why I've chosen the route to Cologne, there is two reasons for that. First of all, I've flown that very route in real life. And secondly, it is a little bit longer than Leipzig. I did Leipzig earlier during my... I did Leipzig a little bit earlier during my learning of the plane, to call it like that. And the flight was a little bit too short, because there is so much to say and so much to go over. Now, for those of you currently talking about the chat, let's have a quick look. A couple people upset that I didn't read the chat for a little while, so let me just have a look over there. Yeah guys, so my apologies, we are flying to Cologne, not to Leipzig. And the reason for that is, as I've just explained. So, Big Johnson, please turn on the cockpit fans. Okay, if you wish for it. Let's just quickly adjust them so that we actually have something of it. And here we go. Is that what you wanted to see? Okay, gonna turn that back off. It's winter after all. Now tell me honestly, did you ask me to turn the fan on because you wanted to see that something doesn't work or that I can't find a switch? Or did you tell me you turn it on because you actually wanted to see the fan spinning? Well, if I'm totally honest with you guys, the only reason I knew where the switch is was because at an earlier point when I've been learning the plane, I just clicked pretty much every switch in the flight deck. And eventually I found the switch for the fan. The same works on the FO side, by the way. You can see over here. Now, that little light that we see illuminated up here, A2 failure, I actually have no idea what that means. So, if you want to catch me on something probably Cyrillic that I don't understand, well, A2 failure, I have no idea what that is, and therefore I have no idea how to fix it as well. My apologies for that. Okay, so, a couple guys asking for the external views. Well, be my guest, let's head outside. And here we are. By the way, a small word on the livery of the plane as we see it over here. This is the default livery that comes with the plane when it is delivered. And it is basically a pretty exact replica of the livery that the real airplane had when it was destroyed. With a single difference, and that is the text that we have on the nose up here. The "Be brave like Ukraine." And next to that, the sign we have on the top right of the word brave up here, oops, is the coat of arms of the Ukrainian military. Now, I was really surprised to find that on a flight simulator livery, especially on one where Microsoft is co-publisher together with InnyBuilds. Now, from InnyBuilds, I have heard that they have a personal relation to Ukraine because they know a couple people over there. But to actually see the coat of arms of an army in a flight simulator repaint is something that I have not expected to see from Microsoft. Now, I'm not going to put any political statement or something in it. I'm just saying that I didn't expect to see this, and I'm not going to comment on the fact that it actually is there. But, oh, watch how the plane is moving left and right. That's probably got to be a wind shift. Alright, apart from that, quite a good model. If we go close up, we can actually see quite some details over here. And it is actually quite a high resolution model, and I do very much like the looks of it. If we look at this. Right, let's move a little bit further backwards. Over here we have the pitot probes and the angle of attack probes on the sides. This is the static port up here. And then if we move along the fuselage towards the back of the plane, look at these huge wings up here. This is absolutely incredible that this thing is flying. I mean, alright, up here we have the aft passenger compartment. Can I actually see something over here? No, just the 2D texture. Actually, no. There is something moving in there, but how can I get to see that? Well, I don't know. Anyway, the aft passenger compartment doesn't seem modeled. The forward passenger compartment is, and we're going to have a look into that in a few moments when we look through the interior of the plane again. Huge tailplane over here. And something that I just about noticed right now is how the lower part of the tailplane actually seems to be right in the jet blast, if you look at that. I wonder why they designed it that way, especially because it's right behind the engine. Maybe the tailplane wasn't effective enough when they built it in a normal configuration, and that's why they placed it into the jet blast to increase the effectivity of the rudders. But it would be the first time that I actually see an aircraft manufacturer doing something like that. Anyway, let's continue our tour along the plane. The, let's call them bubbles that we see up here on the fuselage, like back here or in front over here, they are basically mountings for the Soviet spacecraft Buran, for which this airplane was actually constructed. In case you don't know, the Antonov 225 was actually constructed to move the Soviet spaceship Buran along, which looks quite similar to Space Shuttle, if you know what I mean. I mean, you can't beat physics, so take it from there. And yeah, that is what the 225 looks like from the outside. So why don't we go inside and take a tour of the inside of the plane as well? So we are still stabilized in cruise up here, that is very good, not a lot to be done about it right now. So let's go ahead and take a tour of the cockpit. We've still got 160 kilometers left until we are leaving Ukrainian airspace, and then maybe, hopefully, entering the entering some airspace with air traffic control online over there. So let's go ahead then. And Andy, I'm going to talk about it in a few moments. Let's just quickly continue our tour of the 225. So, looking around the flight deck, let's start with the front panel. The main panels are pretty much the same that we would expect on any Western aircraft as well. However, looking at the middle of the panel up here, there's a little difference. So for those of you who joined a little bit later, let's quickly talk about the layout of the panel here in the middle. And the left side over here is the thrust that we are commanding the engines to give us. The right side is what the engines are actually giving us. So that is the reason why there is a difference between the two. And all that we can see up here is basically our N1. So we don't get any N2 indication up here in the front on the pilot seats. Below that we have a flight control indicator, and then we have the slat and flap indicator on the right hand side. And now comes the landing gear lever. This is quite interesting because this is quite different from what we are used to on Western made aircraft. So looking at the lever over here, you can see that it has two guards on the right hand side. Now retracting the gear is easy. You open the guard, you put the lever upwards. And when the landing gear is retracted, you put the guard back down to the middle position and... you put the lever down to the middle position and you place the guard again. Now, when we are later on going to extend the landing gear, however, we have a guard in the lower position as well. And we've got to remove this, then we can place the landing gear lever in the down position where it's going to extend the landing gear. But here comes the big difference. Once the landing gear is extended, we put the lever back into the neutral position and we guard it once again. So, contrary to Western aircraft, in the Antonov 225 you are going to put the landing gear lever into the extend position only to extend the gear, and once the gear is out you put it back to neutral. That is quite a difference from any other aircraft type that I'm aware of. But I need to say that I'm mostly aware of Western made aircraft, so if other Antonov aircraft are doing the same, then I wouldn't know about it. My apologies for that. This is actually the first Antonov aircraft that I really deal with, so my apologies for any possible ignorance you might find in any comment. Let's go ahead then and talk about the autopilot panel, because this is quite an interesting one as well. Forget about that right side up here for now, just have a look at the left side, because this is basically where we do most of the commanding of the autopilot. So, going through that, on the left side we have our speed in kilometers per hour. Quite easy. You select the target speed, you press auto throttle, the auto throttle is going to fly the target speed. Well, right now it's flying a little bit slower and I don't know why. On previous flights it followed it precisely, now it doesn't. Let's see what happens if I select this down. Nothing interesting. Okay. I might have to check up on that once again, but I will do so. Then we go ahead and we have our vertical speed wheel. Now this is pretty similar to the vertical speed we have on Boeing aircraft. The only difference is that the wheel and the units we see up here, like you see a 0, then you have all the dots, and then you have the 5. This is meters per second. And 1 meter per second basically is 200 feet per minute. So that makes it quite easy to calculate all this stuff. Going on then, we have our altitude, once again in meters. And below that, we have two buttons. The left one, the H3 indication over here, basically is the vertical speed mode. You press this, and the airplane is going to fly the vertical speed commanded. And the airplane should also synchronize the commanded vertical speed with the current vertical speed that the airplane has when you're pressing that button. However, I did not observe that happening in my tests earlier. Might be my personal ignorance, or it might be something that's just not implemented yet, I don't know. The day and night switch, quite easy. Turns on the backlighting of the panel. We can leave it in the day position for now. Then down here, the echelon and the VY indication we have actually engages altitude hold mode when you press it and resets the indicated or the selected altitude to the current altitude the airplane has when you're hitting that button. So this is basically the same as the altitude hold button that we have in the Boeing 737, except that this one actually resets the selected altitude as well. Going on to the panels over here, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. So we have the ER button, which is basically the autopilot engage button. The guarded one up here more or less is like the disengage bar that we have in the 737. So when this is flicked to the other position, your autopilot is inhibited. So if this is to the right and the guard is on top, then your autopilot is potentially available, and when you click ER it is going to engage. Below that, the AT button is the auto throttle, which basically I covered earlier on. Then going to this little wheel that we have over here, this is the wheel that selects the horizontal mode of navigation that we are aiming for. Now, let's go over what all of these things mean over here. We'll start on the left side with course 1. While this is called course 1, it actually is heading 1. So if course 1 is selected, and then you press the PC button on the bottom over here, which basically executes whatever you've pre-selected up here. So you select this to something, then you press PC, and then it engages whatever you've pre-selected. So if this is selected to course 1, it is going to follow the heading buck on the left HSI. If you set this one to course 2, it's going to follow the heading buck on the right HSI. So you can actually pre-select some different stuff over there. VOR1 and VOR2 are pretty much self-explanatory. They follow the VOR radial selected. Navic is navigation, so basically following GPS guidance. And then we have approach, which basically is similar to the approach mode that we have in the 737, with a single difference to the rest of the modes in the Antonov. So any of these 5 modes on the left over here are exclusively lateral navigation modes. The approach mode automatically arms glide slope mode as well. Okay, going on then, on the right side, the high button basically indicates that the airplane has captured and is maintaining the altitude from the MCP. Max is flight level change, but in terms that it is maintaining the Mach number, and VEL basically is flight level change, but the airplane is maintaining the indicated airspeed. So, from here on, things are going to get interesting once more, because now let's talk about those buttons on the bottom over there. We have the horizontal and the vertical button. If you press the horizontal button, it basically toggles a wing level command, so it's just going to level the wings off. When pressed, the airplane will roll from its current bank to a wings level and will hold this. The vertical button toggles the vertical element of the selected mode on the rotary mode selector. For example, when in VOR mode, pressing this will toggle pitch hold, and when set to approach, this button will toggle the glide slope arm, as this is the relevant vertical part of that mode. Now, as we can see, there is actually an empty mode over here, and reading through the IniBuilds Discord and through some more resources about the Antonov 225 online, it actually looks like the Soviets intended to do quite a more sophisticated autopilot for this airplane, but eventually they decided that they just gotta get the thing flying, and so they left out a couple modes that they initially started developing. And for that reason, the autopilot in the AN225 is actually an underdeveloped or an unfinished autopilot. It was meant to get more stuff than it actually has, and that is the reason why it's not only doing what it's supposed to do, but it's actually doing it a little bit worse than what it was actually meant to do. So for example, it doesn't hold an altitude very precisely. but that is just something to be aware of. Okay, so that's pretty much the autopilot modes that you need to be aware of in order to operate the AN225's autopilot. If you go over to the panel on the right hand side over here, I have to admit that I am not very familiar with this panel, so I can tell you what the manual says about the panel, but I can't give you too many background details yet, because this is something that I still have to invest a little bit of time into. But let's quickly talk about what we have over here and what that might or might not be useful for. So, on the left side over here, if you rotate this wheel, basically you are toggling the different modes that we have on the top over here. So basically, VOR1, it shows us the VOR1 frequency, VOR2 is the VOR2 frequency, APK1 is the left ADF, APK2 is the right ADF. And then we also have an KM and an S indication down there. If I'm totally honest with you, I couldn't find in the manual what exactly these are for, so I can't really tell you that. Looking at the other buttons that we have down here, basically we have the autopilot maximum pitch limit, which sets a maximum pitch limit. The same goes for the maximum bank limit that we have as well, and then we have a turn 90 button. Now, this is quite an interesting one, and I can't tell you exactly what button that is, because it is a little bit hard to understand for me in the manual. Basically, the way I understand this is that when you press this, it arms the autopilot to turn 90 degrees to the left or to the right, and when armed it will show green. And then you have the button down here, turn left and turn right. So when this is armed and then you press this, the airplane is going to do a 90 degree turn to the left. And if you press that, it's going to do a 90 degree turn to the right. I don't quite know what that is supposed to be good for, but I suppose if we ever have the possibility to get some commentary from Indie Builds or maybe even from Antonov on this, it would be quite handy. It might just go back to some Soviet style of flying that is no longer in use today, or at least that I have not learned in my Western flight school that I went to. Okay, then let's go ahead and look into the other selectors that we have up here. Basically on this panel we can select if we want to see our true airspeed, 784 kilometers an hour, our ground speed 780, and then APS is the... I would actually have to lie to you if I told you what this is, because I don't know. ES, indicated airspeed, and then the stuff down here, I don't really know, to be honest. On the right hand side then, if we switch around this one, we can see different altitudes indicated. So that's really APK, the altitude selected, IAT, the altitude we're presently flying, and what that is good for. I believe it is the radio altitude. No, actually that is the radio altitude, and what we've got that stuff covered. So, looking down here, we have the heading selector control wheel, which is the red one, and then the black one on top of that is the bank selector control. This basically tells the autopilot a bank limit, similar to what we have in the 737 as well. The wheel to the right of it is the pitch target, so if you're operating in pitch hold mode, by varying this you can vary the pitch that the airplane aims for in autopilot. On the left side we have the aileron trim and we have the rudder trim, and the indicators down here are basically just that, aileron trim and rudder trim. We have a vertical line up there, and then we have the indicator, which is that orange thing down there. When they're aligned, the trims are at 0. Now going back toward the back of the panel, then what we have over here, and this is going to be much less detailed now, so don't worry about me explaining every single system, because if I'm honest with you, in the back over here at the flight engineer station, I've learned my procedures on which knobs I need to press at which time, but exactly what they do, I can't tell you. So we have the hydraulic panel up here, and then we have the engine start panel down here, and we should actually got those switches. Not that we accidentally hit them and cut off an engine in flight. Not that the plane doesn't have enough, but you get where this is going. Over here is our fuel pumps. Over here is our engine indications, and going over to the right side we have the electrical panel. Now, the electrical panel is actually not as complicated as it looks, so let's have a very quick overlook. On the left side we have the transformer rectifiers, which convert AC into DC power. On this side over here we have the rectifiers, and down here we have the engine generators. Basically those switches up here. Then on the top right we have the battery switches, 5 of them. Below that is the APU generator, and on the right side is the ground power unit. And that is basically all there is to this panel. So going to the top then, we have the APU panel. We talked about that already during the pre-flight procedure. And then going to the other end side, we have the navigators and the radio operator station. So the radio operator station is quite easy. We have our COM1, we have our COM2, and then we have a little bit of Soviet equipment in there that is a little bit more interesting. Basically what we have over here is all the instruments we need for navigation of the plane. So altimeters, of course, radio altimeter, and airspeed indicator, and our Mach number down here, and our rate of climb and descent. This is probably in meters per second, I would assume. And we have a clock. Now, the two HSIs up here can be configured separately. So for example, on the left one, we've currently set it to GPS. However, for some reason, the GPS horizontal horizontal deviation indicator is deflected to the left, while if you look at the captain's panel, it's currently centered. So I'm not 100% sure why it's doing that. However, we still have the distance to the next waypoint and the course shown up here. The other HSI I have up here is currently configured to VOR1, but we could switch it around. For example, we could switch it to the ADF over here. We could switch it to the VOR and everything we'd like to select. On the left side we have two DMEs available, and on the right side over here, this is interesting once more, because you are going to use this for the approaches you will be flying. Basically, the lower unit up here is where you select the VOR frequencies. So this is currently set at 108.0, the right side 115.9. The top of that is where you select the courses that you are going to see on the HSI when you switch this to the corresponding navigation mode. So that is going to be something we'll use to set up the ILS approach later on. And the little unit we have on top over here, which by the way we also have on top of the overhead panel, is basically a unit that identifies the Morse code from the VOR that you receive, decodes it into the identifier of the nav aid, and then basically shows you the station name below that as well. So that's a nice little tool to identify the nav aid that you have tuned. On the top over here we have our two ADFs, the left and the right, or the numbers 1 and 2, and the remainder of this stuff is basically, I believe this is the INS, but I might be mistaken. But this unit definitely looks like an INS, and that computer over here, as well as the computer up here, I cannot really tell you what that is. My apologies for that. I couldn't find a reference in the manual, and if I'm honest with you, I spent my time learning how to fly the plane. Well, how to get the plane from A to B. I don't like the term fly the plane in this particular topic, because I'm very far from actually being able to fly the plane. I can get it from A to B in the simulator after I spend a day studying, but that's about it. Okay then, let's finally take a quick tour of the cabin, and thereafter I promise you I'm gonna have a look into the chat once again. So, going back towards the cabin, we actually have the forward passenger cabin modeled over here, actually the first part of it. So we're going to start on the side over here with the emergency exit, and then we have the areas where the crew are going to spend their time. Now, in real life, on the Antonov 225, basically you had two crews, and they were staying on the airplane at all times. So the crews were actually staying on this plane for a month at a time, and basically it was one crew flying, the other crew, well, living and sleeping. And this is the living spaces that they used. Now, if we went further to the back over here, we'd find the kitchen and stuff like that. We can still find the sink up here, but that is all that is modeled in this plane at this moment. We can't go through the we can't go through here, through the curtain. So that is the front compartment of the plane. Now, don't stop right here. Basically, this is the hatch that would be used to get down into the cargo hold. And I don't know why we can't click this, but if we go to the cockpit, then we can actually find a switch in the EFB to open that hatch. If we go on to the ground menu, then in here we have the internal door. And if I open this, now it says internal door opening, but I assume that this is actually a pressure bulkhead, because as far as I remember, and I might be mistaken, the cargo area is not pressurized in the airplane. But I might be mistaken on that, so if anybody of you knows any better, then please let me know. Okay, and Konali confirms, correct, the cargo hold is not pressurized. Okay, perfect. That's also the reason why we have such a big bulkhead up here. But let's nonetheless just quickly go downstairs and have a look into what things look like over here, just so that we've actually seen the model. So here we are in the cargo area of the Antonov 225, and this is a huge area. This is by far larger, and in terms of volume, by far larger than, for example, the cargo space of a Boeing 747. And we can select several different loadout configurations. For example, right now we are flying with an industrial piece of equipment, but we would also be able to fit, for example, a fire truck or several helicopters in here. So that is what the cargo space of the AN225 looks at down here. Very nice to see this modeled as part of the flight deck model as well. But for our case, let's just quickly return to the flight deck. I'm just quickly going to jump back up and close this once again. Now, be aware, if you open this like I just did, you should get a decompression in the living compartments of the aircraft. So, technically speaking, I would have caused a decompression by opening this exit, but I wanted to show you anyway. Alrighty, so then let's talk a little bit about you guys. First of all, thank you very, very much to Andy for gifting channel membership to other channel members earlier on during the stream. Thank you very much. Now, for those of you who are new to my channel, in the membership you're going to get early access to new videos before they're actually released to the entire public, and in first class membership you even have the ability to request your own videos. In any case, welcome to all of you who have just joined the channel as a new member. And of course, you're gonna get a couple cool badges and priority reply to your comments as well. Alright, so with that, I guess we'll just about start with the very first question that I see asked, or at least the question that I see asked the most. Would you recommend getting this? Now, I'm only a little bit into learning how to fly this plane, so it would be quite inappropriate to say like, yes, it's study level, you need to get this, or to say, no, this is garbage, don't get it. However, here's my first impression. My first impression is that we're getting a really good looking model, and that at least from the stuff that I have dug into for now, the plane seems to be working quite well. The autopilot isn't 100% accurate, but according to IndyBuilds, that is actually correct to the real airplane. If that is true or not is something that I cannot comment on, so I'm just going to believe IndyBuilds with this, Especially seeing that the history of the autopilot is that it was not fully developed, and so the autopilot, I could well imagine the autopilot to be a little bit inaccurate. Now, flying this thing is fun. It is a lot of fun. That is the first thing that I foremost want to say. You have a huge airplane that taxis totally different to anything that you are used to in the simulator, even compared to the biggest one we have at the moment, which is the A310. This is a totally different beast. So handling of the plane is something that is just going to be totally different for you. Another thing that's totally different is just the entire design philosophy and the operation of this plane. So if we combine this with a price of just $19.99 and seeing that the entire money they make from selling this airplane is going to go to a fund that is set up to rebuild the real airplane that was destroyed in the Russia-Ukraine war, then I would say that yes, this is absolutely worth getting, even if it's only for financing the rebuilding of the real plane. But I'm absolutely positive that you can have a lot of fun with this plane. There were a couple comments about how to navigate this earlier on, and a couple people have already complained both under this live stream as well as under my release announcement video that there is no FMC in the Antonov 225. And, well, what can I say? They used the GNS 530 as a primary navigation tool in real life, as far as I'm aware. So that is actually completely realistic. Alrighty, so that is pretty much my first impression of the 225. Now, before I'm going to continue with this, if you guys have any questions, please put them in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible now. But before we go on further, let's just quickly have a look into preparing our VNAV, because this is all VNAV we have available. So what we're gonna do is basically we'll set this up like any general aviation VNAV. So we've got 25,000 feet selected. We want to reach that at 0 miles before the waypoint Ibana. No, actually before. Hey, aren't there a couple of waypoints missing over here? Anyway, let's make that 250 before Bartep. That is pretty much what I'm used to from flying this route in real life. So this now tells us begin the descent in 37 minutes. That means we have 37 more minutes to go. And the only thing that we can and should change up here is, of course, the vertical speed profile. So let's put this up to let's say 2,500 feet a minute, click enter, and now it recalculates the top of descent. So now it says begin descent in 59 minutes, and this is basically our top of descent calculated. So we have 1 more hour to go before we are going to reach the top of descent. And that's pretty much all there is to the VNAV that we can do right now. From here on, we're gonna sit back, relax, and enjoy the cruise flight, and just see how this plane is working. And Danland's asking, do they use the GNS 530 in the real 225? Yes, they absolutely do. Then, Andrew. Early Monday I did my first live VATSIM event, and wow, it makes MSFS so much more realistic feeling. Any recommendations for model matching for VATSIM? Well, personally I'm using the Alpha India Group models, but the FSLTL models are said to be very good as well. So both of them really work. Just make sure that you get a proper model matching file for vPilot, and there you go. Then Andrew, where can you buy this Antonov 225, and how much does it cost? You can buy it in the in-game marketplace, and it costs $19.99. So that's a really good price for the plane you're getting. I really have to say that. I'm really happy with how this looks like. William, do you plan your route with the world map before starting the flight? No, I don't. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm doing it the realistic way, and basically I'm using SimBrief to plan the flight. They have added an Antonov 225 profile just today, in time for the release, so you can use SimBrief to plan your flights, and thereafter I'm simply manually inserting my route into the GNS 530. And Metal Eye, the error on the overhead is because the anti-ice is off. Okay, I've got to try finding that switch. Now, would be pretty easy if I could read Cyrillic. Unfortunately I can't, so I have not really an idea where to find the anti-ice switches. I believe I read something that they are located somewhere over here, but without being able to read Cyrillic, I'm afraid that I'll actually have to look it up in the manuals, provided it is there. Then, Philip, could you explain what's the difference between Soviet and Western ADI, and why some pilots used to confuse which way the aircraft banks? Yeah, Philip, sure. The first thing to notice, though, is that the AN225 actually has a Western-style ADI. And this is actually correct to the real airplane before its destruction. So, the airplane saw a major retrofit of systems about 10 years or so ago, and that retrofit also brought in a Western-style ADI. The difference is that in the Western version, when you bank the plane, the airplane symbol always stays in the same centered position, and the horizon beyond the airplane symbol changes its position. In contrary to that, in the Soviet era, the horizon would be fixed in place and the airplane would change its position. So imagine in a Soviet-style airplane, the horizon is always in the same position, and now imagine this airplane symbol over here banking to the left. That would indicate a left turn to you. Now, if you think about it, if you imagine this to be banked to the left for a second, it would mean that the horizon is banked to the right in the background. However, a horizon that's banked to the right indicates a right turn in a Western ADI, while it would be easy to confuse it with a left banked symbol on a Soviet ADI. However, that is not a concern in the Antonov 225, because this one is equipped with a Western-style ADI, just like the real airplane actually was. So, there is no need to be concerned about that. Okay, then Metal Eye, what did fix the throttle control warning? You refer to the warning that's shown up here, for anybody who's currently wondering, and if I'm honest with you, I have absolutely no idea. That is something that I still have to understand in this airplane as well. Okay, XV, probably that stuff equals anti-ice. Okay, let's see. And Ice Air 767, will Antonov rebuild the AN225 with a glass cockpit? If I'm honest with you, I don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so is that it would take billions of dollars to design a glass cockpit for this airplane. And with that, I don't only mean inserting some screens and keeping everything, but building a proper glass cockpit for me means removing the necessity for the flight engineer and the navigator, and if you do that, you basically build an entirely new avionics suit, and doing that costs billions of dollars. Now, seeing that they are going to rebuild only a single unit of the plane, it's probably not going to be worth it to invest the money into developing that entirely new airplane, seeing that the money you would save from having a glass cockpit would be insignificant. Of course, you have to pay 6 crew members versus 2 crew members in a glass cockpit, but imagine it, the lifetime of the plane when it gets rebuilt is probably going to be in the region somewhere around 40 or 50 years maybe. But in that time you're only going to pay like so many millions of dollars to the crew members who are required in addition to the captain and first officer in the way that the airplane layout currently is, versus it would cost a lot more to develop a glass cockpit for the plane. So that's why I personally believe that if they are going to rebuild the plane, it is actually going to be quite similar to the original AN225. And William, haven't heard the rebuilding is starting, probably just fundraising. Yeah, that's what I believe it to be as well. I mean, first of all, the war's just got to be over. We don't even know in which hangar the new airframe is standing, so before the war is over, I don't think that they can even start with it. Otherwise, there's just going to be a missile strike and the new thing is just going to be destroyed again. Okay, so, anti-ice is in the shutdown checklist. That is a very good idea there. Let's just get out the shutdown checklist. Engine shutdown. Engine wing anti-ice, okay. Find that. Here it is. Perfect. So that's our anti-ice. So all we've got to figure out now is which of those is engine anti-ice and which is wing anti-ice. But looking at this, we have two switches here, two there, two there. So that's probably going to be the engines, and that's probably going to be the wings. If anybody of you is able to read what is written on the panel over here, which of those is engine anti-ice and which of those is wing anti-ice, then please do let me know. And Cooper 87, they're all engine anti-ice. Okay, and... okay, Konali, the upper is engine, so the lower is wing, I suppose? Okay, Konali, the lower seems wing and flaps. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So... engine anti-ice? Okay, they are 3 position switches. If I just put it to here, can you tell me what the 3 different positions are? Is that like an automatic mode in the middle over here, or what exactly does that do? Can you read that from the panels? Okay, Konali, up automatic, middle off, and down manual. Okay. So basically, if we have a manual position there, then what does that mean? If we put this into the manual position, do we have to operate these things? Are they like manual selectors for the engine anti-ice then? To put them on the other engines? Okay-ish, so that's the anti-ice. So basically up means automatic. Well, so I suppose if we leave him in the default down position for now, that should be alright. And if we want to use it, we're just going to put them into the up position. And I guess that the anti-ice is then going to work. But let's try that. By the way, can anybody read what the switch on the left side here is? Just want to try this for now. Play around with it. So I would expect this panel to tell me which anti-ice is actually turned on then. Can you put something on up here? And Aviation 050 is asking, how do the physics feel like? Well, how do they feel like? That is something that I'm not 100% sure of. Now, the airplane itself is quite responsive, so whenever you're doing a control input, it reacts very quickly to it. However, I can't comment on if that is realistic or not. Now, let me put it that way. The plane flies believable. I could imagine that a properly designed airplane, which I imagine the airplane to be, like most Soviet-style planes, and actually most planes built in the Soviet Union, were very well-balanced hand-flying machines. So I could well imagine that stuff to work properly, and to fly very balanced like this. Now, don't let yourself be fooled by the mass of the plane. Like, yes, this thing can carry 640 tons, but look at those huge wings up here. And that could make the plane quite responsive as well. I have yet to fly it at the maximum takeoff weight. The highest I've flown it as was like 480 tons. So, obviously, a plane that can carry like almost 200 tons more would be quite responsive at that weight. Now, it taxis very nice, it flies quite believable, and to my knowledge they have actually had contact with some real-life Antonov 225 pilots who helped them with the project. So, all in all, I would say that the flight model does not look unbelievable to me. It feels believable, so I would say that, seeing that they had contact with real-life AN225 crews, I kinda expect the thing to be realistic. That is what I could say about it. And Nagov, do the fans work? Oh yes, they definitely do. Here we go. Okay, let's put it back off. And actually you can turn the fan around as well, like look at that. You can actually change the position of this. Of course, in terms of development effort, that is quite an easy thing to do, but it's nice to have things like this in the plane. Seeing that it comes at a price point of $19.99, I am actually really happy with what this airplane has in it. So, it flies really nice, it has a lot of features. Now, of course I'm not type rated in it, and indeed I don't know too much about the plane, except what I learned in a couple of documentaries, which however were not really focused on the systems of course, but more on the general operation of the airplane, and what I learned from the product manual. So, of course I don't know all the stuff that is not there, but from what I can tell for now, it has everything that you need to conduct a flight from A to B. It is a challenging airplane to fly, and it is a fun airplane to fly manually. So, for the price point of $19.99, I would give an unrestricted recommendation for this. I absolutely would. Very enjoyable to fly. Okay, then, Konali, on the anti-ice panel there are temperature regulators, vertical switches with a bracket around, 6 of them. Mode from up to down. Auto, cool, heat. Okay. Ben, Frank, does Microsoft Flight Simulator correctly simulate cold temperature error? To my knowledge it does not. To my knowledge it does not. It has some sort of a discrepancy, but I don't think it is entirely correct. But, to be honest, I don't know exactly what it simulates and what it doesn't simulate. There is something simulated, but it's not 100% correct. That is what I can tell for sure. Then, Bootwin, how do you know how the sunshades would work on the front windshield? They look interesting, the things on the top of the front windshield. Well, to be totally honest with you, what you see up here basically is a curtain. So, you know, just pull it down. It's just a normal curtain. But that is how easy things can sometimes be. And the Soviets were known to build easy airplanes. Sometimes they had solutions in their aircraft. You know, like the fan that we have up here. You get these things for, you know, €1 or maybe for 10 rubles in the next shop, and you install them on an airplane. The equivalent in a Boeing airplane would surely cost at least $10,000, if not much more, and is a technically sophisticated solution. So, yeah, but this just works. And that is how the Soviets designed their aircraft. And that is something that, you know, looks quite rudimentary, but as long as it works. And MK. This plane is waiting for a bunch of mods to improve the depth of the systems. Very atmospheric plane. Well, I wasn't aware that there are mods to be made, but if that is the case, that would actually be great. And Steven, on the Tupolev Tu-22 blinder bombers, the working fluid for the AC system was a 60-40 mix of ethanol and water, otherwise known as 80-proof vodka. Nice one, nice one. But I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if it works. And as long as it doesn't explode when it's not supposed to. And verdammte Axt, in some Soviet aircraft the fan is the first and most reliable indication of a generator failure. Honestly, that would sound absolutely what I would expect. And Fizz, just like the Soviets used a pencil for spaceflight and NASA spent millions designing a special zero-G pen. Yeah, that's exactly it, you know? Sometimes the easy solutions are the good ones. Sometimes they really are. And Steven, oh, the fluid works. The crew certainly doesn't after drinking it. That's a good one. That's a really good one. Okay, so let's have a quick look where we actually are right now. GPS, flight plan, inbound Etuda, now inbound to Rapid. I believe that means that we are in Czech airspace, but let's have a quick look at the en route chart to see exactly where that is. And this plane we actually still need to check the en route charts to make our lives easy, but here it is. So we are just over at Etuda, which is over here. And seeing that we've just passed Etuda, we might as well do a quick fuel check. So what are we supposed to have? Etuda, we're supposed to have 38 tons on board. Now we loaded up like 7 more, so I would expect 45 tons of fuel on board my airplane right now. Let's go to the back to the engineer station to see how much we actually have. So this is basically 7 times 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that is 46 tons of fuel on board. So we're actually quite close to the fuel quantity that SimBrief calculated we are supposed to have. Quite cool. So the fuel usage is quite spot on there. And Talia, sadly the astronaut pen is a space legend according to Snopes, and I've heard that from other sources too. Okay, really? Oh, that is unfortunate. But it would have been a really cool story. It would have been a really cool story if that was actually true. Ben, Amantha, Esports, what is the ETA captain? Okay, let's have a quick look. So, we are top of descent in 37 minutes, and from there on I would expect something in the region of maybe... yeah, give me something in the region of about an hour and a bit. By the way, something we could also do really quick, because these altitude restrictions here, they easily tend to mess you over. Let's just just go for 3,000 feet, and we want and we want to reach that at the final approach fix. Right, at leg 2. Then it's top of descent at 50. Okay, that's quite alright. We can live with that. So let's go back to our original restriction, which is closer to what you would get in real life, as far as I remember from that route. Oh, bar tab, flight level 250. Nope, nope. 250, enter. 35 minutes to the top of descent. Okay. By the way, if you're wondering why there is such a great difference, in Cologne they make you descend like really, really early. That's the reason for the rather early descent over here. Alright. Then Malteser is asking, do you use the add-on linker, and how, if so? Yeah, I do use it, and basically I enable the add-ons that I expect to use, plus a general set that I always have active, like the majority of German airports, since I'm German. So if I decide to divert somewhere on a short notice, then I might always go to I might always just divert to an add-on airport as well. So that's how I'm using the add-on linker. Then Björn is asking, when flying an offset approach, when do I decide to straighten up to the runway? That comes down to pilot decision. There is no actual rule on that. However, what I would recommend is make it dependent on how far offset the approach actually is. Like, if you're using an approach that is, for example, 5 degrees offset, then I would recommend to stay on the published approach procedure until you are actually done with your landing checklist. So, you know, use the standard flap extension schedule, and then when you are done with the landing checklist, disconnect the autopilot, recycle flight directives, and then continue for your landing visually. If you have an approach that is offset by like 20 degrees or something, for example, Alicante VR X-ray, runway 28 I believe, is one of those, you know, then just do the landing checks a little bit earlier, or, you know, or just fly, straighten up to the center line, like, really early before you start configuring for landing. But I would recommend to straighten out as soon as you've completed the landing checks, so basically when you reach the point where you can fully focus on flying the plane. Alright, so we still have one important thing to do that any pilot, or at least any YouTuber pilot, needs to do whenever they make their way into the plane. And that is, of course, find the good positions to mount the GoPros. Personally, I'm always a fan of a perspective like this, where you see a little bit out the front and see the panel from the side. Now, going up here, this would surely also be a nice perspective, as you have a really good view down from the cockpit of the 225. Apart from that, what if you mounted the GoPro back here? That would also look quite cool. Well, I guess if I want to know, all I need to do is have a look at the air clips video from the Antonov, as there is a really good video from the real plane available on air clips here on YouTube. Alright, apart from that, what do you guys need to be aware of when flying the Antonov 225 online? Well, the first thing you need to be aware of is how the airplane navigates, and therefore what it is capable of doing. The SimBrief profile by default has a note in the flight plan remarks saying that the airplane is non-ANAV equipped. according to an ANAV 1 standard. And that is actually something that you should take care of, because it means you can't fly ANAV departures and ANAV arrivals. Now, with the GPS, you more or less can, at least if you have a look down here on the indication on the lower left of the GPS, which basically tells you the accuracy of your GPS guidance. Now, in en route navigation, it is accurate to 5 miles. It might be 2, I can't promise that. If it goes onto the departure or arrival indication, it's actually accurate to 1 nautical mile. So, with that, you should be able to fly an ANAV 1 procedure. However, the plane is not certified to do so, and that's the reason why you can't do it. Next to that, this big screen we see up here, by the way, is a weather radar. However, the switches are currently inoperable, so there's nothing you can do with the weather radar. The click spot we have over here is only from the spoiler lever, and apart from that we can't click anything over here. So the weather radar is currently inop. Frank, does it feel heavy while hand flying? To be honest, not really. It actually feels quite lightweight. But I've only flown this plane like, 200 tons below the maximum takeoff weight. So obviously it's not going to feel as heavy there as it might do at a higher weight. Unfortunately, I have a 5-day working schedule starting tomorrow. But I have one standby day in there, so I hope to be able to do a little bit more playing with the Antonov on that day. But we'll just about have to see what's gonna happen, and for sure I am going to do a flight at the max takeoff weight to see how it feels over there. However, for now, all that I can say is it feels believable, and they did have input from real-life AN225 crews. So, yeah, I would definitely say that the flight model, to me, does not feel unrealistic. I can't say if it feels realistic because I have never flown an AN225, let alone any Antonov plane at all. So all I can comment on is my experience, with the 737 and with an Airbus full flight simulator, and of course with some general aviation aircraft, which are like 639 tons away from the max takeoff weight for this one. But overall, I tend to say that I am quite alright with this. It feels quite lightweight, but we have to keep in mind that Soviet aircraft were usually designed for great hand-flying characteristics, while the West at some point just thought like, well, screw the hand flying, we're gonna make it more economical and then just add fly-by-wire controls that are going to make the plane fly decently. And Yoke, Inibuilds mentioned that the weather radar was inopt in real life several years ago because the Contour GPS system, which was implemented during modernization and is similar to the GNS 530, had a weather radar. Okay, that would make sense indeed. And Konali, have I ever flown on any Soviet-built airplane as a passenger? I've flown on an Antonov 2 as a passenger, on the AN2, but of course that is in no way comparable to what we're flying here, right now. Great looking airplane, by the way. Great looking. By the way, have a look at that. Seeing the chemtrails from 6 engine. Did I just say chemtrails instead of contrails? Oh boy. Oopsie. Anyway, let's get back into the plane. Let's just get back into it. If I start talking of chemtrails, I should start slowing things down. Alright, let's have a quick look into what the tablet can do. And yes, I'm trying to deviate attention right now. First of all, we have the dashboard. We can click the load plan from GPS button up here, and that's going to load up the GPS flight plan into here. We have the flight plan down here, basically every single waypoint. We don't see our route shown up there, but this is the entire waypoints. And departure weather is blank because there is no data published for Hostomel Airport in real life anymore, as the airport is pretty much destroyed from the war. But the arrival weather over here for Cologne is showing quite good conditions. QNH 1028. Now, QNH 1028 is going to be something that we'll have to think about later on, because looking at the altimeter, this is not in hectopascals. The standby is. Over here we have feet and hectopascals. The same goes for the digital standby display. However, the primary altimeter is still in meters. And of course it's using Russian units for that as well. And the standard over here is a 760 or 759 point something high. However, we have the unit converter in here and we might use that. So we said earlier on that the weather, for which by the way we also have a separate tab, so we can have a look at it like this as well. The QNH 102, oh, this is interesting. Look at that. The raw data meter shows us QNH 1028. The right side shows us 1029. So there is actually a bug in here. Well, let's take it from the raw data. Actually, no. This is just outdated. Look at that. This is from 1650 Zulu, while the right side is more up to date. This is 1820. While it is 1830 right now in real life. Okay, so 1029 actually is the current QNH then. So if we go into the converter, and now we go in here, and let's say we want 1029 hectopascals, then now we get it both in inches as well as in millimeters. And this is basically what to use on the Russian altimeter then. So over here we have 771, and that's what we'd use on the metric altimeter over here. By the way, my apologies if I at any point call this a Russian plane. You know, Soviet and Russian is quite connected in my head, even though I know it's not. And this is a Ukrainian plane. By God's sake, this is a Ukrainian plane, not a Russian one. But my apologies for that. So this is the converter that is quite useful over here. The same goes for what we have up here. So let's say we get an ATC assigned speed restriction of 300 knots. We can just type the 300 in here, and it's going to tell us that equals 555 kilometers an hour, or 345 miles per hour. Now I don't know why we get it in miles per hour, but the kilometers an hour over here is really the interesting thing. Also be aware of the little red message we have down here saying aircraft control disabled when inputting text. So right now we can't actually control the airplane, but once we click on that text, basically we have control again. Also we have the weight conversion. Now this is not as interesting for us. The only thing where this is really interesting is when you enter the load menu of Flight Simulator up here, because over here for the fuel we still get pounds. So this is quite good. If your flight plan is set up in kilograms, you can easily convert it into pounds and then load your airplane like that. Similarly, distance conversion. I find it interesting that it says distance and not altitude, but yes, technically speaking, feet and meters are still a distance measurement unit. So this is quite useful as well to calculate the metric setting you will need for your autopilot to meet ATC assigned altitudes or any altitude constraints you may have on your star. Apart from that, we have the options. Now, the realism option up here, that may be interesting for a lot of you, especially if you're viewing this live stream from the beginning of it. You will notice that closing that door took almost 10 minutes time. So if you put this to the fast option, things are going to go quite a bit faster. Up here we have the cockpit language option, which we can change between English and Cyrillic. The interesting thing, however, is that this basically only changes the autopilot controls. So if I set this to Cyrillic, basically we get Cyrillic inscriptions on the autopilot panel entirely now, versus if I change this to English, we get the English inscriptions up here. However, it does not change the rest of the cockpit. It would be really nice if there at one point was an option to actually change the entire cockpit, into English language, but I guess since that didn't exist on the real airplane either, we've just got to live with what we have. Next, we can change between kilograms and pounds as options, and finally the autopilot altitude window between steps in ones and steps in hundreds. If you go for hundreds, then basically change this in steps of 100 meters, versus if you go into steps in ones, it changes in 1 meter increments. Now, if you have to dial up 10,000 meters of altitude, it might be quite handy to change this to hundreds in order to save yourself from turning the knob for an eternity. Alrighty, so that's the EFB explained. That is really all there is to it. Apart from that, the dashboard, we can configure the cargo that we want to load. So that is what we have over here, and we can switch between the boiler, the none that is just some generic pallets, and with that you can basically set the weight of your cargo on your own. And then we have a couple of pre-selected equipments that have been famously transported on the real AN225, and if you select any of those, then it is actually automatically going to load the correct weight of the plane, or the correct weight of the payload into the plane as well. So we can switch between a truck. Then we have 2 fire trucks, so 2 of them beyond one another. Then we can choose a train as payload. We can choose 3 helicopters. And then we have the large industrial boiler, which is what I've currently loaded up. Now, in real life, the plane has flown a lot of things, like it's flown gas turbines for power plants, for example. But it's also been used extensively during the beginning of the COVID crisis, where a lot of medical equipment has been transported between different parts of the world. And we might want to take a moment as well to have a look at what kind of routes have actually been flown by the real plane. But before we do that, we've actually just got to contact me from a VATSIM controller, so let's go ahead and check in with him first, before we continue with the remainder of the stuff that we have to do over here. As always, let me know if there is anything in the audio that is not done quite right, but I do believe that I have configured my audio to an acceptable level. So, 133.575. We have the radio located up here. 33575. Unit radar, good evening, Antonov Bureau 4507 Super, flight level 360. Squawk 1000, Antonov Bureau 4507 Super. Okay, Squawk 1000. That. Alright, so top of descent in 17 minutes, but we'll see. Air traffic control is probably going to give us an early descent anyway, because that is what basically always happens on arrivals into Cologne. And you guys say you can't hear ATC, okay, that's interesting. Let me try to fix that in a second. Yeah, okay, I see what's causing it. Basically, whenever on my live streams you don't hear air traffic control, the reason for that usually is that my computer tends to change the names of the sound devices, and then I need to reset it every time in the streaming software, but it doesn't tell me in advance. It just tells me that, yeah, everything works, and then
radar, very good.
now you should be able to hear air traffic
40
control.
Bravo, flight level 350 in
Now you should be able to hear them.
Boeing 40 Bravo, Servus München, radar.
And Metal Eye, waiting for people painting this plane into Ryanair or so. Well, have you seen that little meme when the US flew a C5 Galaxy completely filled up with children on the cargo space with like 500 people on board? And have you seen that meme with Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary just next to it like, I should get one of these? Now imagine how many people you could stuff into this. That gotta be a lot. But honestly, I don't want to know. Honestly, I don't want to know. But it would be an interesting idea. Like, think of it. If you remove the cargo deck of this plane and build 2 passenger decks into it, and maybe even a 3rd deck on the top up here. Like, the cargo space is 4.4 meters high. So that could cover 2 passenger decks of 2 meters each. So you could actually make this a tri-decker. That'd be interesting. That'd be an interesting thought. By the way, let's play with those lights for a second. Okay, now they're... Now the landing lights are off, the taxi lights are off. Why is that? Well, I don't know, but the landing lights are off, that's the important thing.
Direct to Ruda, clearing for Sierra Bravo, danke. Monsieur 1198, contact Warthog radar, 125.45,
And Rainman, Lockheed proposed an L1000 based on the C5. Yeah, I heard about that. That would surely have been an interesting concept.
Monitor 122.8,
And Konali, there were actually Il-76 cargo aircraft that had passenger seats built into the cargo hold. Has been used as a charter for tourists. There are even photos of those. That'd be interesting. And Amantha, the lower deck is not pressurized in this plane, so that would kinda make the entire theory of putting passengers in there, well, useless. And Harry, sorry if this has been asked, but how's the performance? Well, it's been asked before, but I didn't actually answer it, but a couple other people in the comments did. And on my computer, the performance is very good. Like, in the live stream, it's probably worse than it is on my computer. I would say it performs, well, similar to the Phoenix A320. Now, the Phoenix isn't the best performer as well. Like, it performs a little bit worse than the PNDG 737 does. And the same is the case with this one. However, on my computer, there is no notable frame rate drop. Like, the frame rate is good all around. However, there are other people saying that the performance is more like the A310. Now, on my computer, the A310 runs fine as well, so that's not a very good comparison. However, there are people saying that on the that the performance is similar to the IndyBuild A310. So maybe just get out the 310 and see how that's performing, and then expect this to be somewhat similar. But on my personal computer, no problems whatsoever with the performance. And Crimson Ghost, is there any model matching in VATSIM yet? Well, none that I'm aware of. I know that a couple of people wanted to work on it, but since the aircraft CFG file was encrypted, they couldn't. But we'll have to see. I'm sure that some people are gonna come up with something. Okay, Matteo, if you're retracting the lights to the lowest position, it will be on, but in plane. You have to put it in the lowest and then in the middle. Okay. So, in the lowest, and then in the middle. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, nice. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for that. William, how much runway needed for the Antonov 225? I wish I could tell you. Unfortunately, there is no data currently published for it. There is nothing in the manuals, and well, I kinda wish there was something available, but at the moment I'm not aware of any requirements. Goodwin, off-topic question. Would you dare to guess what the maximum landing rate in feet per minute of a Cessna 172 is before it needs an inspection? Well, I can't guess it, but in my flight training we did an engine failure simulation at 10 feet in the climb, and when I hit the ground with the plane, the vertical speed indicator was showing 500. Keep in mind the vertical speed indicator is delayed on those planes, so the actual rate of descent was probably a little bit more. So, that's all I can say on that topic. Now I'm waiting for the comments referring to a certain airline. And Amantha, AN225 at London City. Well, apart from the fact that the runway is probably not even built to take the 550 tons max landing weight of this airplane, if it's empty, I'm sure it would be doable. If it's not empty, well, that's gonna be more interesting. And Cooper87, on the Inibuild forums, they have an historic route PDF in the AN225 FAQ section. Gives you an idea of airports it could go to. That is a very good idea indeed. For copyright reasons, I can't bring that up on the channel, but what I can most certainly recommend you to do as well, if you are looking for another source of information on routes to fly for the plane, go on a plane spotting website like Jet Photos, then search for that particular aircraft, and then click on photos. And normally, all those websites tell you the location in which those photos have been taken. So that is a very good way to find out places where the plane went to. But of course, the routing document from Inibuilds is also very much recommendable. You can find that on the Inibuild forums in the FAQ, like Cooper87 said in comments. And MK, Dimitri Antonov said the minimum strip on which they landed was 1,800 meters long. I can imagine.
Report your requested level.
330 final, Lufthansa 8 Romeo, Papa.
Lufthansa 8 Romeo, Papa, climb flight level 330, proceed to Warthog.
And Vaniksak, next to the Be Brave Like Ukraine, it's not the coat of arms of the army, it's the default coat of arms of the Ukrainian nation. Okay, my apologies for misidentifying that earlier on. I just used Wikipedia on that, because I'd seen the symbol, so I googled for it, and then my Google results were incorrect. My apologies for that.
Translate my Alpha contact Bremen 136.450.
And Matteo, fun fact, the thing with rudder and aileron is the same length as an A320. Wow. Reminds me of the rudder of the A380, which is the same as the, or which has the same space as the wing of the 737.
2250, defend flight level 200.
Mantha, I would recommend an app called FS Dispatch. It has most flights since the 1950s up to today. Well, that sounds interesting, Mantha. I'm going to have a look at that. Alright, so, we're not all that long.
04507, super contact Langen 135650, Vater.
135.650, Antonov Euro 4507, super, bye bye. Long radar, good evening, Antonov Euro 4507, super, flight level 360.
Antonov Bureau, correction, Antonov Bureau 4507, good evening, long radar identified. When ready, descend to reach flight level 100 at AirNet.
When ready, descend to reach level 100 at AirNet, Antonov Euro 4507, super. Okay, 100 at AirNet, we can do that. 100.
Ryanair 2 Romeo Kilo.
0 miles
Contact payment
before.
radar 128 of Mr. 50. 128.
And descent in 2 minutes.
Kilo.
Okay.
So looks like 951, stand for you. Contact
So let's go
payment
ahead
radar 128
and start preparing for our approach into Cologne Airport. Cologne HOTAS 132125. Let's see, where is the COM2? Actually, we don't have one up here. Okay, looks like we only have COM1 on the overhead. Then we need to go to the navigator's panel. Now, if only I knew how to actually listen to this as well. But I don't. Okay. Well, we are just going to use the tag status. Expect ILS approach, runway 14 left or RMP 06. Well, we are certainly not going to fly an RMP approach with this. Transition level 60, wind 060 at 2, Carvog, temperature 1, QNH 1029. Okay, perfect. So, we are going to do the ILS 14 left as expected. Let's see, time to top a descent, 1 minute and 15. Approaching VNAV profile, okay. So let's set the altitude all the way down at flight level 100. And I'm gonna put this back into full hundreds over here, and then settings in hundreds, okay. So flight level 100 equals roughly 3,000 meters. Here we go. Okay, descent to target. VS required 2,300. So, altitude is selected down. Press the H3 button. Now we're going to rotate this all the way down. This is the not so recommended way of doing this. The other way, we're just going to the vertical mode button and then just so the way that you're normally supposed to do this is go into vertical, I believe, and then just select the airplane pitch using the wheel down here. But seeing that we have difficulty seeing this and this at the same time in the simulator, I rather prefer to do it that way, even though it is not how the airplane is flown correctly. But let's play with it a little bit later on. I'm sure we're going to get there eventually. Okay, then, what else do we need to prepare for the approach? And guys, attention, there is a chart coming. I promise this time the chart is going to be removed from view before we actually land. So, Cologne approach, ILS 14 left. Let's take that. Here we go. Final approach course 136. Let's go back to the navigator station, and then we have 136 on the courses.
Hang radar, ED232 with you at flight level 370.
136 and 136. Oh, come on. Okay, we got it. 136 on either side, and then the ILS frequencies 110.9. I'm going to tune that active on the number 1 already. But I'll leave number 2 on the frequency of the Cologne VOR DME, so that we have a DME from our airport. That's going to make our life a little bit easier.
Bravo, Alpha, Tango, Echo, Lima.
And we actually get an indication there already. 1.7, well, it doesn't look right yet, but that doesn't really matter, does it? Over here on the DME. We're going to look at that later. With that, all we need to set up now is the minimums, and we can do that on the radio altimeter. Now, the airplane is not certified for an autoland, so it is only Cat 3 capable. So all I'm going to use over here is the 60 meters radio, which basically is 200 feet. Okay, let's accelerate a little bit more. I want 500 kilometers an hour. That's a good speed for the descent. And if we have a look into the conversions, then kilometers an hour, give me 500 over here, is 270 knots, so that's an easy speed to fly at. We call it that way. Of course, if you wanted to descend quicker, you can at any point use the level change mode as well. So if we disconnect the auto throttle, take the throttles into idle, now go into the VEL button, then this is basically our level change equivalent. But as you can see in descent, it is a little bit annoying at times, call it that way. And where's the plane turning right now? Pretty much over at GAFTA, okay. Should sequence any moment. If ENAV on. Antonov Bureau 4507, looks like we have a small problem with the navigation system. Can you confirm we are inbound Lamov right now?
Antonov Bureau 4507, affirmative.
Roger, in that case, we're able to resume on navigation.
Roger that.
Okay, so that just looked a little bit strange with the HSI indication there. That's why I thought, like, well, I'm just going to tell ATC immediately about our problem before, you know, anything happens that's not supposed to happen. So, an important lesson for everyone. Be careful with your airplane. And if anything goes wrong, advise ATC earlier than later. Okay, so I'm going to show you now how we can actually go into the pitch hold mode. So I selected vertical control up here, which basically puts us into pitch hold. And now by rotating the wheel over here, we can basically command the airplane as much pitch down, and thereby whatever resultant rate of descent we're looking for as we want. In the same mode, we could also engage auto throttle, and if we told it, for example, to go 550 kilometers an hour right now, like this, then the auto throttle would do so, but we would get the corresponding effects of the higher airspeed on our rate of descent. So as our speed increases now, the rate of descent is going to start reducing, because this is a pitch hold right now and not a vertical speed hold. You can actually see how the rate of descent is slowly reducing as our wings are producing a higher lift. Okay, so we should have 2,200 feet a minute. The maximum we can command using the vertical speed wheel is actually 2,000 feet a minute, so that's why I'm just putting it into attitude hold, or rather into pitch hold, and why I've manually commanded the steeper descent.
Contact Bremen radar 128.75.
Then Metal Eye, don't go below the blue indicator on the approach on the EOS analog and arm the reverser before landing. I will, my friends. And Nico48, I have a question. How do you move around in the cockpit? I'm using the translate view functions of my flight simulator. And Andy, what airline do I fly for? I'm afraid my airline does not want me to tell. They are not a big social media fan, so I'm afraid I cannot talk about that. So let's see, we need 2,000 feet a minute now, so let's go into vertical speed once again, and put that onto the 1,000 mark. Keep in mind, this is meters per second. 1 meter per second effectively is 200 feet a minute, so if we need 2,000 feet per minute rate of descent, commanded by VNAV, then we set minus 10 on the VSI. Also, as we're descending down, we can quickly do air traffic control a favor and calculate the exact meter equivalent of flight level 100, because I know that VATSIM ATC otherwise can sometimes get a little bit, let's just call it a little bit nervous. So 3,048 meters is actually what we're looking for. In that case, let's get to the options. Relic, 3,000.
Lufthansa 901 Alpha.
That was wrong.
Flight level 1.
English, but once. So 3,048. Here we are. Okay, so let's talk about the approach profile in the Antonov. According to the manual, we are to maintain 250 knots until we are 5 miles prior to the final approach fix. At 5 miles prior to the FAF, we are going to start speed reduction, and there is a fixed flap extension schedule that is published for the Antonov. In other words, we are not going to use any variable speeds. But what the manual says over here is basically that the maximum speed for flap 2 is 250 knots or 463 kilometers an hour. Once we're below that, we're going to extend flaps 2. The maximum speed for flap 15 is 416 kilometers an hour. Once we're below that, we're going to extend flap 15, and so on. Basically, 5 miles prior to the start of the ILS, you are going to select flaps 2, and then going to slow down accordingly. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Okay, so let's have a quick look into the flight plan to make sure that we don't overfly AirNet, which is our clearance limit.
4,000 feet.
So before AirNet, we actually need to talk to air traffic control once more. Actually, we might just as well do it now. We only have 24 kilometers left to that waypoint.
Antonov 4507, say for you, contact Langenradar 135.350.
135.350, Antonov 4507. Thank you, bye-bye. Okay, that makes our life easy. So, 13535.
Information, November, correct, expect vectors for LS1 for left.
Radar low, Antonov 4507 Super, descending flight level 100 in one area.
Antonov 4507, Langenradar hello identified. Information November is current, expect vectors for LS1 for left.
Vectors are LS1 for left, Antonov 4507. Okay.
Lufthansa 901 Alpha, turn right heading 25, descent flight level 100.
So that's pretty much everything we could do to prepare for the approach.
4507, sliding 260.
Sliding 260, Antonov 4507. Okay, so let's turn that knob. 260. Then we go up here, set it towards course 1, PC, and now it's basically in heading select. One to go. Go 500 feet a minute. 1,000 feet a minute. Auto throttle is still going to keep our speed, and I'm going to keep the speed up high at 550 kilometers an hour all the way until we're cleared below level 100, because we're actually quite far out from the airport right now. If you want to have an exact look, 550 kilometers an hour equals 300 knots, so we're doing a decent speed up here. So let's go ahead now and take the airplane out of VOR mode. I'm actually going to put it into VOR 2 on my compass up here for now. And the reason I'm doing it is because it gives me my mileage to the airport VOR that we have tuned. So the aircraft's leveling off at level 100, very nice. So now I know we are 80 kilometers away from the target. Now, if we want to convert that once more, we actually don't have a converter from 4507. Okay, that's our point to reduce. We'll start by reducing the speed towards 450 kilometers an hour, and once we've got the speed down, we're gonna start losing our altitude. Still flight hold 70, might as well calculate the meters equivalent, 2,133.
Lufthansa 9 up on Alpha 10, right heading 265.
This is a little bit annoying that we constantly have to switch between the different units, but, well, it is what it is. Okay, approaching the target. Go vertical mode up here.
Turn right heading 280.
Right into 0024507. Okay, so heading to A0 is selected, and I've set the pitch wheel down. Let's do 1,000 feet a minute, that should be more than sufficient at this point. It is 1,000 feet a minute. Now we go into a vertical speed hold, and now the plane is holding it while maintaining 450 kilometers an hour at the same time. So, what's always a little bit handy is go in here and activate vectors to final, and now it's basically giving us the distance towards the activate the lag towards lag 2, please. Interesting, the activate lag option is not available. Anyway, doesn't matter. Distance between lag 2 and the outer marker is like 6 miles, so we are something like 40 miles away from lag 2. So we're doing quite well at our altitude where we currently are in 8,300 feet. You can see I'm basically using the GPS as an additional aid over here to the conventional navigation that we have selected. So basically what we have, let's see if I can get some decent data. Now I'm misconfiguring it, okay. We're gonna stay on here. I'm not gonna touch this. I'm just gonna break it. If I can't read what's on it, you know, if you don't know what the button does, don't touch it. But like this, it's set up for the ILS. Later on we're gonna switch this to this button over here, but that is going to lose the DME, and I want to keep the DME for now. That's the reason why I'm doing it, why I've configured it the way I've configured it right now. Ernst is asking, is there a way to know your minimum clean speed? I'm afraid not. At least none that I would know. Maybe there is, but I don't know of such a way. Okay, level in 7,000, and now you can see what EDDK meant when they talked about earlier on that the autopilot is not fully developed on the plane. You can see how it's constantly going a little bit up and down here on the vertical speed indicator. And according to EDDK, the plane would actually normally be hand-flown under circumstances like this. So, well, you know what? Auto throttle off, autopilot off. 48 was commanded, so let's stay with that. So let's hand fly the plane. What I can say is the trim is overly sensitive. Like, a very small trim input is going to give you a huge disturbance of the equilibrium of forces, so the trim is definitely oversensitive, that much I can say. But for now, hand flying the thing, maintaining an altitude is not all that difficult. It is a surprisingly easy airplane to fly. Many people would think that with the huge size of the airplane, it might be very hard to maneuver it, but that is not the case at all. Like, I have to play a tiny bit with the elevators here, because the trim is just too sensitive to trim the plane out perfectly,
Oscar Kilo 51, turn
which
right
is something that I surely hope they are going to improve. But for now, we'll have to live with it as it is. Anyway, as you can see, it is not all too difficult to fly the plane, and
Delta Mike, Lima Bravo Kilo, Langradar, hello?
as you can see, holding a heading, holding an altitude, and at the same time more or less holding a speed, currently less than more, is definitely possible.
Delta Mike, Lima Bravo Kilo, at the moment, please stay in front of airspace Charlie. And in this lab is a controller practical test, and we have space, so 12855 would be better.
Delta Bravo Kilo, Cockpit, okay, we will stay out of airspace Charlie and continue to crew to Düsseldorf. Done.
That's interesting, a controller practical test in Düsseldorf. Maybe that is something for us as well. But no, it would be unfair. The AN225 is a wake turbulence category super aircraft like the A380 is, so I don't want to mess with that trainee who has his practical test over. He's probably never had a super aircraft before in his airspace, so I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even emphasize those details on that. So.
Antonov Birdo 4507, turn left heading 260, descent 3000 feet, QNH 1029.
Left heading 260, descent 3000, QNH 1029.
Oscar Kilo 51, descent 4000 feet, QNH 1029.
Okay, heading 260, descent 3000, that is roughly 1,000 meters.
Jumping from
1,000 meters, please. And then set altimeter 1029. We set that is 771 on the magic altimeter. 771 and on the standby then 10. Okay. So let's see, what's the mileage? That's quite okay. 04507, how many track miles are we expecting?
Airbus Antonov Birdo 4507, expect 21 track miles.
Roger. Okay, 21 miles, then we're quite good with our altitude. That means we can switch to the ILS.
Oscar Kilo 51, turn right heading 050. Jumping from Alpha Echo, contact Lang radar 135.65. Eurowings 37 November, turn right heading 3.
Okay, below 100, landing lights and taxi light can go out. I don't really care about continuous descent approaches here, to be honest. I'm just going to fly the plane down to 3,000 feet. We just don't have the technical equipment installed in here to make a perfect CDA. Well, of course we can use the glide slope, which is just about coming live, so I'm expecting waves to at any moment now. But for the beginning, while familiarizing with the airplane, let's get comfortable with it at first, and then get to the CDAs at second. In any case, we can start.
4507, turn left heading 17 to lock, clear ILS 1 for left.
04507, turn left heading 17 to LS. Okay, let's start getting that speed down. Hitting the 25 degrees angle of bank is still a little bit difficult for me because we have the marker on the side over here, rather than having it top as we would normally have on the Western EDI. 3,000 feet to maintain. Slightly undershot there. Localizer alive. Very nice final vector by air traffic control here. Getting us right up to the low. And flaps 2. Very nice final vector indeed. If only I flew this more accurately. Okay then, flaps 15.
Oscar Kilo 5-1, turn right heading 09 at 0.
Glide slope alive and on glide slope. Okay, gear down.
Antonov below 4527, contact Calvon Tower 124 9 at 75, correct.
124 to 975, 150, 45, bye bye. Okay, this is of course a task for the radio operator right now, not for the pilot flying.
Still requesting pushback and balance.
Number 8, Mike Kilo 4
Okay, so the landing gear is down, so with that, the lever goes back into the off position. That is important in this plane. Burma Tower low, Antonov 4507 Super, established ILS 14 left.
Antonov 4507, Tower, please leave with
Okay, so let's slow it down all the way to the final approach speed. The blue buck basically marks the final approach speed for the present weight.
Number 8, Mike Kilo 7,
That is pushback approved, facing north. Done that 1 kilo.
Okay, flaps 25. Flaps 35.
Runway 4 available for taxi with you, Fury 1 north runway 1 for left distance.
1 for left, dead launch, Sergeant 4507, roger. Okay.
9 and 1 Alpha, taxi to gate Charlie 10 via Alpha and my blue line. Alpha, my blue line, Charlie 1.
So let's see, gear down. Looks like a great plane, doesn't it? So gear down, flap full, spoilers armed. Now, the thing doesn't have radio altimeter callouts. That's something that I will definitely have to deal with. So it'll probably be a positive landing, but we'll see about it. Continue. Okay, minimum continue. Thrust idle, decrab, and on. Get me on the ground. We're down. Okay. Speed brake. Thrust reverse.
Alpha.
130 knots. Reverse us in. And welcome to Cologne. So, that's gonna be interesting looking at the landing rate later on. I have absolutely no idea what it is. Indeed, if I'm totally honest with you, I kinda missed the point where we actually touched down.
Sort 4507, welcome to Cologne, taxi right on Alpha, Hotel on runway 24.
Right on Alpha, Hotel 24, Antonov 4507. Okay, so now comes the part of navigating on that airport. Gonna do the after landing procedures later on. Just let's get onto that taxiway first of all. Let's see, how well am I taxiing? Oh, that looks interesting. Okay, a bit far off to the right.
Payment leader,
Okay, that looks better. So, after landing.
9717, you're on Cologne 1 Tower 3.
That goes, flaps go. And lights, retract, might take a little while. And then neutral, strobe light off. Minoid off, that one off, and that one.
507, continue taxi on Alpha cross runway 24.
Continue on Alpha cross runway 24, Antonov 4507. Okay, that's runway 24, clear to cross.
Cologne Tower,
Strobe lights on.
Lufthansa 8 Mike Kilo taxi to hold in point runway 1 for left via Tango for Bravo and Alpha 5.
Then let's quickly go ahead and start the APU. That's off, on, disarmed, master. Same here. Off, on, disarmed, on.
4507, parking will be parallel to taxiway Alpha on, then Echo 15 to Echo 10, main gear on, then Echo 1.
Okay, parallel on Alpha and main gear on Echo 12, Antonov 4507. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the Foxtrots down here. So first of all, we go straight at. And that's actually pretty nice that he got the correct parking procedure there. Now all we need is a marshaller to actually get us there. But I'm afraid we'll have to find that way on ourselves. Well, anyway, for now, we are just going to proceed straight ahead up here, and then eventually we're going to find our way towards the gate. Antonov 4507, confirm the parking is with the nose facing to the west.
Copy.
Gotcha. Okay, so the end of the parking, so we can take it to the left over here. Now, of course we would need a marshaller to park this, and of course they would have removed all the fancy equipment over here in real life, so we wouldn't have any steps or anything over here right now.
Lufthansa 1 Kilo, ready for departure, volume 1 1
Okay, and then main gear on the stand, so we've got to taxi a little bit further forward.
Lufthansa 8 Kilo, copy.
So let's see how that is. Yep, that is, well, the wing is still going a tiny bit over the red line, but there's just too much equipment on here that I would otherwise crash my engine into, so we've just got to stop at this position.
Line up, after 1 for left.
Line up, 1 for left. Lufthansa 1.
Okay, so the parking brake is set, then let's go ahead and start the procedures. So, APU is available on both sides, APU bleed can go on, and most importantly APU generators can go on as well. Okay then, let's go ahead. Parking brake set, lights should be all off now except, oh sorry. So lights are all off except for the beacon. Then instrument switches.
Lufthansa 8 Mike Kilo, 1 passing.
I'm actually just quickly gonna say thank you to the air traffic controller before I'm going to shut my radios off.
Clear for takeoff, Lufthansa 1 Kilo.
Antonov 4507, parked on stand. Thank you very much and see you next time.
See you.
Okay, so now we can turn it off. So instruments are off. Then engine and wing anti-air select off if used, and that is selected. Oh, now it's selected off.
Kilo 501, taxi to...
So, hydraulic pumps
Alpha Delta Tango.
Alpha Delta Tango, 051.
are selected off. Fuel pumps. So that is going to be an interesting way of setting them once more. Basically we start by turning off everything in the bottom down here. Okay, that's the fuel pump set down there, and finally... Okay, that's the fuel pump set. So, on the electrical panel, we can confirm that the APU generators are online and in use. Engine generators all off. Okay, and with that we are ready to shut the engines down. So, engines. We have too many of them in this plane, you know. Okay, so, engines shutting down. Let's monitor the engine shutdown. And then in a few moments we're going to have a look at my landing report. Okay, I'd say that the engine's below 20%. So, back to the captain's panel and time to switch off all our instruments. And the beacon. So that's pretty much most of the stuff off. Why is there something still on up here? Did I miss any switches? No, doesn't look like it. Back here, all the switches are off as well. Okay, nope, that looks good to me. Okay then, we are just gonna accept the transponder and that stuff being on over here. Doesn't matter. Okay, beacon light off, nav light off. Then we go back to the flight engineers panel, and then the transformer rectifiers and the rectifiers are going off. And before we shut down the batteries, let's shut down the APUs. And that's gonna be it then. So, thank you very much for flying Antonov. We've made it all the way to Cologne. That looks interesting. Sometimes the drone camera does weird things. But here we are. Welcome to Cologne, everyone. My parking skills are definitely something that we can still work on, but now is the moment of truth. Let's have a look into the landing report and see what SimToolkit Pro's got to say about our flight. So this is our route of flight, which is pretty much almost exactly as we filed it. Then let's have a look. View full landing report. This is the moment of truth, my friends. Wow. I did not expect that. Exactly on the marker. But 266 feet a minute. Well, it's a cargo landing. It's alright. It's exactly on the marker, on the center line as it should be. And the rate is sent, well, a little bit positive, but not too much of a problem, to be totally honest. Alright, so I would say for a first landing under pressure, as in a first landing on live stream, that was definitely an alright approach and landing. So, with that, we are pretty much at the end of our live stream. If you guys have any questions, then now's the time to ask them, and I'll see that I can answer as many as possible. Now, for those of you who are leaving at this time already, I would like to thank you very much for watching, and hope that you have learned something in the stream. Do let me know in the comments below what you liked and what you think I could do better, and in the meantime now, I'm looking forward to any more questions that you might have. Alright. Okay, I see lots of questions coming in there already. So let's start with those actually relating to the Antonov 225, as that is what's the topic of today's live stream. And thereafter we're going to go into the others. So, then, ZenX, can you do a cockpit tour? Yeah, sure, we can do one real quick, but this is just going to be an abbreviated version. So, basically we have the Captain's main panel and the FO's main panel, similar to Western aircraft with the autopilot controls up here and a couple more down here. The overhead panel is basically just for communications equipment in this airplane, and then we have those side panels which are basically just for switching on a lot of the equipment. Also we have our lights up here. Going over to the flight engineers panel is a little bit more interesting. Let me just quickly shut those APUs down, by the way, so that the airplane is truly shut down. So on the flight engineers panel we have the hydraulics panel up here, the engine start panel is located down here, let me actually close that. And then we have our fuel panel up here, APU is this one, engine panel, and the electrical panel is on this side. So let's, by the way, shut those batteries down. And that's it. Then on the other hand side we have the radio operator station over here, and then we have the navigator station located up here. So that's the basic layout of the Antonov 225 flight deck. Someone's asking, will there be another flight? No, unfortunately not. So this is gonna be it today. And Circuits is asking, is this the aircraft that was destroyed in the Russian invasion? Yes, unfortunately it is. But all of the money that they earn from this add-on release is actually going to go to Antonov to rebuild the airplane. So, for those of you who don't know, but for those who have seen the pictures, of course the actual AN225, the registration that we see up here, and the airframe is not going to be repairable. It is damaged beyond repair, but there is a second AN225 airframe that was built like 20 years back, but that's never been completed, and they've just never had the money to complete that airframe, and that is what the money that's been made with this add-on is going to go into the completion of that second AN225 airframe. Then, Konali, how would you request a departure clearance knowing that you could not fly regular Antonov departures? I'd basically go like this. Antonov 4507, request radar vector departure. Then, Dream 787 liner, where is the heading bug knob? I can't find it. That's the red knob you have on the pedestal down here. The red knob adjusts the heading bug, and the black one on top adjusts the bank angle. Then, El Hispano is asking, which country do you belong to? Well, I'm German. Alright, and that's gotta be it for today's livestream, my friends. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you learned something today. I will have a more detailed tutorial series about the Antonov out over the course of the next couple of days. The first one's probably gonna come out even tomorrow morning, and then the next over the course of the next few days. I would like to thank you very much for joining, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so using the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below, or by becoming a channel member, which is going to give you exclusive early access to new videos, and in first class membership, even the ability to request your own videos. For now, thank you very much, I wish you all a good evening, enjoy flying the Antonov, and I'm looking forward to see you all again very